That's why at Kroger, we shorten the time.
Does anybody have these sunglasses?
I do. You want to use them?
Let me see what they look.
They're just regular sunglasses.
I just want to see what it looks like. Does it look any different?
Good evening, everyone. I call to order the May 8th business meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. We welcome everyone and request everyone in the audience to silence your cell phones and electronic devices. Ms. Wagner, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Bolton? Present. Mr. Craig?
Here.
Ms. Jones?
Here.
Dr. Moffitt? Mr. Morosky? Mrs. Weinberg?
Here.
President Lindy?
Here. Members of the public who wish to speak may do so by clicking the chat button now if you are online. The chat feature will be open for your requests for 5 minutes. Please submit your name, your affiliation, your school community, your topic, and your contact information if you would like a direct response to any questions you might have. I'm going to move very quickly through just a couple of opening notes so that we can get to celebrating some young people this evening. I wanted to say first, Happy Teacher Appreciation Week to everybody here and express my gratitude for our teachers in Cincinnati Public Schools. We're going to hear more, I think, during our announcements about this green ribbon I'm wearing for Mental Health Awareness Month. So more on that coming soon. And I'll very briefly just touch on our 3-month board priorities. We decided on these back in early 2023 and are making every effort to align our time with the areas where the board most wants to see progress happen during this time period. There has been a lot of movement on almost all of these over the last couple of weeks, and each of these are important to different ones of us for different reasons. I would direct my colleagues to board docs with an updated timeline from the ALMA group on strategic planning that will include, I think, a visit here at our May 22nd board meeting with some community meetings happening that same week and a follow-up board meeting on June 14th. It may be that the one-on-ones have not been all scheduled yet, but they should be scheduled very soon, and we can talk about that more later on. So I think with that, I would just like to say we'll turn it over for our presentation on valedictorians and salutatorians.
Good evening. If the board members could come to their spots up front so we can be prepared to present salutatorians and our valedictorians.
Okay. Okay. Greetings to the board chair and superintendent. Aiken is proud to present the student achievement leaders from Aiken High School. Leonard Dangerfield, who is our valedictorian, who will attend Miami University this fall to pursue a degree in marketing and business. Janiyah Chin is our salutatorian, who will also attend Miami University and double major in special education and biology. At Aiken High School, we are so proud. What's that? Oh, okay.
They're just going a little too fast.
Okay.
That's not your fault.
Okay. Okay. Janiyah Chen, who is our salutatorian. She will be going to Miami and majoring in special education and biology. Both of these students are Miami Teach students who received the Miami Cincinnati Scholars Scholarship.
To the board chair and superintendent, we're proud to present the student achievement leader from Clark Montessori High School. Samuel Harris is our valedictorian who will attend the University of Cincinnati this fall to pursue a degree in secondary education. We have 3 salutatorians. Our first salutatorian is Ethany Bresnahan. She will attend the University of Cincinnati and major in psychology. Xander Hurrier, who is graduating to the workforce with an electrician apprenticeship. And Elena Branson, who will attend the Ohio State University and major in engineering. At Clark Montessori, we're so proud of each of these students' achievements.
Good evening. The board chair and superintendent, we are proud to present the student achievement leader from Gamble Montessori High School, Heaven Pringle, is our valedictorian who will attend Kent State University this fall to pursue a degree in fashion design. We have 3 salutatorians. I'll wait till this is done. I don't think they're here. No.
Then just announce them.
All right. So we have We have 3 salutatorians, Latriana White, who will attend Howard University and nursing major, Chandler Burks, who will attend Central State University as an undecided in their major, and Mohamedou Nadief, who will attend Northern Kentucky University and major in computer science. At Gamma Montessori High School, we are so proud of each of these students. Oh, hi. Come on in.
Mohamedou showed up.
Come on, Mohamedou. Thank you so much.
We'll be doing data at the end. We're just hoping the students will be able to show up on time. Dr. Williams isn't able to be here tonight, so I'm going to present to the board and chair and superintendent. We are proud to present the student achievement leader from Hughes STEM High School. Anaya Brown is our valedictorian who will attend Ohio State University this fall to pursue a degree in nursing. Next up for Hughes is Tamaya Leonard, is our salutatorian who will attend the University of Louisville and major in nursing. Give a round of applause for our Hughes STEM High School awardees.
Good evening. To the board chair and Superintendent Wright, we are proud to present Student Achievement Leader from Lighthouse. Our valedictorian, Jamie Colton, is unable to be here, but we'd like to still honor him because of the journey he has taken. Donnell Arnold Jr. is our salutatorian. He is undecided. Not only is Donnell known for his academic success, he is known for his swag.
Good evening. My name is Mike Allison, proud principal at Oyler School. Thank you to our representatives from the board and other dignitaries in attendance. We're here to honor our leaders from Oyler School. Mahogany Wooten is our valedictorian who will attend the University of Cincinnati, majoring in exploratory studies. Sadie Smith is our salutatorian who will attend the University of Cincinnati and major in nursing. She was also our Marion Spencer Scholar at Oyler School.
Hello. To the board chair and superintendent, I am proud to present the student achievement leader at Riverview East Academy. Our valedictorian, William Hijema, is not here tonight. He is undecided. Our salutatorian is Takaya Pouncey. She will be attending the University of Cincinnati for business. She is also a basketball star and an all-around great human. And we're very proud of her. all of our students' achievements.
Good evening to the board chair and the superintendent. We are proud at SCPA to honor our student achievement leaders who are absent this evening, but we want to recognize them in their absence. Michaela White is our valedictorian. She is committed to attend Pace University in May. Ruby Kolick is our salutatorian, and she has committed to the University of Pittsburgh for journalism.
To the board and superintendent, we are proud to present the student achievement leader from Schroeder High School. Gianni Glasgow is our valedictorian who will attend the University of San Diego and double major in chemistry and criminal justice. All right. Amila Hall is our salutatorian who will attend Eastern Michigan University and major in IT business management. At Schroeder High School, we are so proud of each of these students and their achievements. Thank you.
To the board chair and superintendent, we are proud to present the student achievement leaders from Spencer Center for Gifted and Exceptional Students. Yun Park is our Marion Spencer Graduate Award winner and summa cum laude recipient. He will attend the University of Michigan and he will be pursuing a degree in data sciences. Malnus Knudsen is our summa cum laude recipient, and he will also attend the University of Michigan and major in aerospace engineering with a minor in Judaic studies. At Spencer Center, we are so proud of each of these students' achievements. Congratulations.
To the board chair and Superintendent Wright, we bring you greetings from Walnut Hills High School. And we are so proud to present our student achievement leader, Mr. Lewis Key, who is our distinguished scholar. We need to. That's my man right there. Lewis will attend Columbia University this fall with the major is undecided. Sarthak Sunny Diggy is our cum laude scholar award recipient. Sunny will attend the University of Washington at Seattle. And we would like to say that we are so proud of each of these students' achievement. We're looking forward to them doing great things.
Good evening to the board chair and superintendent. We are proud to present the student achievement leader from Western Hills University High School. Emily Jop is our valedictorian who will attend the University of Dayton this fall to pursue a degree in civil engineering. Joseph Ponce Flores is our salutatorian who will attend Skidmore College, and he has a major that's undecided at this time. At Western Hills High School, we are so proud of these students' achievement, and we look forward to all of the things that they will be able to share with us in the near future.
Good evening to the board chair and Superintendent Wright. Withrow University High School is proud to present the student achievement leader from Withrow University High School. Jalen Caprono Green is our valedictorian who will attend the University of Cincinnati this fall to pursue a degree in information technology. Jalen is also one of our Marion Spencer scholars. Withrow University High School is also very proud to present the student achievement leader, Yabrina Priska Asum, who is our salutatorian and who will attend Ohio State University and will major in biology pre-med. Let's go. At Withrow University High School, we are so very proud of each of our students receiving these achievements, and we're expecting excellence and greatness from them today and beyond. Thank you.
To the board chair and superintendent, we are proud to recognize our student achievement leader from Data High School. Hattie Fall is absent today. However, we do want to recognize her as our valedictorian who will attend the Ohio State University or University of Pittsburgh this fall. Hannah Hall is our salutatorian. Here today, she made it. Hannah will be attending the Mount St. Joseph University and major in medical sciences. All right, we are so proud of these students' achievements. Thank you.
Principal Badgett is not able to be here tonight, so
He's in the house. Good evening, everyone. To the board chair and superintendent, I am proud to be here to present our students of achievement this evening from Robert A. Taft Information Technology High School. We have Anton Williams. He's our Val, who will be attending Morehouse University this fall. He will be pursuing a degree in business administration. All right, next we have Ms. Keisha Calloway, our Sal, and she will be attending the University of Cincinnati for pre-med.
To the board chair and superintendent and Principal Workman, who I don't believe is in the crowd and going to surprise me. We are proud to present the student achievement leader from Woodward Career Technical High School. Kaylee Madison Brown is our valedictorian who will attend the University of Cincinnati this fall in their exploratory studies program. And our final student, Elijah Ferguson, is the salutatorian who will attend the University of Cincinnati and major in architecture. At this time, let's give a round of applause for all of our student achievers. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everyone. How about one last round of applause for our young people this evening, and for their teachers and for their principals and their parents and everyone who helped them get here. We're going to move in a moment here to our superintendent's update. I just wanted to spend a quick second on some of the things related to those board priorities that I didn't want to put in front of the guests we had this evening. I just wanted to mention two things. One is that these matter to people for different reasons. On things like transportation, for some of us up here, this is an issue because of the cost it drives in our district. For others, the impact that our bus transportation has had on families and community members and teachers. The updating our bylaws is important, I think, to some folks, because it's the best way of improving how we operate as a board and how we work with the administration, including the length and design of our meetings. Our strategic planning process is important, again, to different people for different reasons, from how we'll reach the goals and guardrails we adopted in December, to how we engage community members and our staff on key questions about the district's future. So on all of these, I just wanted to thank my colleagues for the movement we've been seeing in recent weeks, and look forward to their completion. I might ask, and we'll transition to the superintendent's report in just one moment, but the priorities technically had an expiration date of May 1st. On all of them, I feel like we're very much in progress and doing important work for which there is a timeline to finish these by the end of either May or June. It just depends on which priority and where the work is. If there isn't objection to from board members, I might suggest that we carry these over throughout May and through June until we finish them. At which point, after the school year is over the summer, we can meet again as a board and decide what our next set of priorities would be, rather than trying to set new ones right now, because I feel like we're just in motion on all of these. Is there any objection to us continuing with these until we finish them? Great. So with that, we'll turn it over to item D, which is the superintendent's update.
Thank you, President Lindy. This is relatively brief, but one of the most rewarding times as a high school principal is graduation, and I can equally say one of the most rewarding times as a district leader, as a superintendent, is also graduation. So one more time, let's give it up for a round of applause for our students, our valedictorians, and our graduates. I did want to provide an update to the board because there has been a lot of information since the story hit the media last week. I believe it was Thursday or Friday, about students that were graduating from Withrow. And essentially the story shared that there were a number of students that would not be able to graduate because they owed student fees. I believe initially the support for the article was a foundation that has been supportive of Withrow, has worked with students at Withrow in the past, and some of the other schools in the area that were having some challenges paying their student fees. I think most of us know that across most school districts, across high schools, across colleges and universities, there are fees that students incur during the time that they are in school. And one of our policies is around fees. And so students can incur these fees until it's time for graduation. Before graduation, before they actually receive their diploma or their transcripts, students are expected to pay those fees. There are built-in structures already for students that are experiencing hardships, whether that is housing insecurity, whether that is students that are on free and reduced lunch, or there are other challenges that families are having. And there's a lot of discretion at the school level, and the treasurer may be able to share more here, but there's a lot of discretion at the school level on being able to excuse fees from students, not to impact their ability to receive their diploma or get their transcript when needed. As we followed up with each of our schools, including Withrow, of course, there's the goal and the desire to get the students to pay the fees, but our schools were able to affirm for us on Friday, our high school principals, that we don't have any schools where students are not allowed to participate in the ceremony of graduation because they owe fees. So if they have met graduation requirements, and fees are all that is left, then those students are able to participate in the ceremony of graduation. And we all know that the ceremony of graduation is really not just about the student, but it's about the student, it's about the family, it's about the village that has helped the child get across the stage. So I definitely do want to recognize our high school principals for making certain that this is not an actuality that's happening in our schools. By the same token, it is expected that students are paying the fees before they receive their transcripts or their diplomas. So there have been several organizations that have reached out. I know the NAACP reached out to one of our board members. The mayor's office reached out to me as well. We have asked schools to identify students that still have a hardship once they get to the end of the time for them to pay their fees. And that is something that we would be able to share with those that would like to offer additional support if this is something that is not waived at the school level. So I did want to provide that update because I know that there has been a lot of community concern just with the way that the article was written, but following up with the principal and having discussion with him, yes, there is encouragement for the students to pay their fees, but in the time that the principal has been the principal at the school, based on what he shared with me, there has not been a student that has not been able to participate in the graduation ceremony because they actually owe fees. So I did want to provide that update to the board and to the public.
Thank you, Superintendent. If there is nothing else in Superintendent's updates, I believe we are now at the item on the meeting agenda for hearing of the public. Each speaker will have 2 minutes and will direct all comments to the presiding officer. Before I go any further, I did not actually receive any slips tonight in hard copy. Do we have anybody online? Going once, going twice. We have completed our hearing of the public this evening, everybody, and we are on to item F on committee reports. Would former Vice President Jones please present the Student Achievement and District Instructional Performance Committee of the Whole from April 19th?
Thank you, Mr. President, and call me Carolyn Craig, by the way, okay. Inside joke for those. Okay, so I would like to present for board approval the minutes of the Student Achievement District Instructional Performance Committee of the Whole meeting held on April 19th. We basically have 4 major updates, all very informative. The first one being English language learner update, wherein the superintendent provided some data that identified trends in the student population for ELL students, and also gave us a count per school. So that was good information, and there is some, if you want the detail on it, please feel free to check the website for the minutes. I think that she did offer her thoughts about the supports that are needed during the year, including building-based supports for ELL students, targeted English support, universal supports in all schools, and then newcomer life students and limited interrupted formal education supports. Our next update was on pre-K. The superintendent gave us a trend line, data on trend line of where we, for the progress that we made in early childhood development enrollment. This year, she also reports that the district is working on the Early Childhood Curriculum Council, which is an important asset to the growth of the program. And her presentation included information about the 5-star requirements, the proposal for additional support, clarification of things like nap time, and moving forward on our timeline. The third item, which was huge, was the Montessori curriculum adoption, which, by the way, the board formally approved the adoption of the fidelity model of Montessori education. It was well received by the audience, since most of the people in the audience represented Montessori schools. The superintendent also provided us with a timeline for achieving full implementation of that. With the new Montessori curriculum, we will be able to align Montessori practices and materials with state and district standards, and we want to ensure that students attending Montessori schools will get that vigorous instruction that's expected of that model. So given that, there were a number of, and I won't go into all of the full-blown discussions, but I would encourage you to read some of the other considerations that were offered at that time. And then finally, we received a transportation update. As you know, this has been an ongoing topic for the district, and we had a very robust conversation about the model that the board, the scenario B model, where we will implement, and this involves us making some changes in our start times so that we can accommodate bus routes. And there's been and continues to be a great deal of discussion about that. And the board actually offered, the discussion actually presented around 26 very key bullet points for consideration, including things like whether or not we should change walking distance. So I won't go into all 26 of those bullets, but it was a very robust conversation, and I think that just so we know what direction we're going in, I believe the board did approve the scenario B, which was the change in start times. So I believe that concludes my report, and I offer this for board approval.
Thank you very much, Board Member Jones. Is there any questions on the report from this committee? Hearing none, we'll move to, thank you very much. We do not have our Policy and Equity Committee chair here this evening. Is there another member of that committee, either Ms. Bolton or Mrs. Weinberg, who'd want to present those reports? I think we can also everybody had received it, and if people have questions, we can invite questions. But is there anything anybody would like to voice over? Do you have concerns with it going up for adoption tonight without Mr. Morawski?
I think we should wait for adoption when the chair is here.
Any objection, Ms. Weinberg?
No, that would be fine.
Okay, so then we will, I think, return to the policy. Well, Superintendent, any reason why we need this to go through this evening? That I don't know of any. Okay, so we'll, if Phyllis, I could ask for your help just carrying this over to the next business meeting. And we'll hear from Dr. Moffitt, Chair of the Ad Hoc Attendance Boundaries Committee.
Okay, so we, the minutes are up on the board docs for anyone to take a look at what we discussed in depth. I'm going to go through a cursory view, and I do encourage all board members to check out the maps that Jeremy has been able to provide regarding our walking distance and our walking boundaries, our neighborhood boundaries, and our school boundaries. Those are there as well. We had a very good discussion with the community involved regarding two really big questions. Pleasant Ridge Montessori and Silverton had some community concerns that were able to be at least identified a little. The discussion is on the table. Jeremy gave us a great brief cursory presentation around magnet schools and Silverton. And so just, again, not reading the entire 7-page report, but just kind of highlighting one big ask of both of those communities and everyone in attendance is that more engagement be done with between administration and the schools and their LSDMCs regarding the programming at that school. And so if you do look at the notes, there's almost a full page of community questions and comments and discussions. We were able to get some clarity from, and some historical perspective from Board Member Bolton regarding when a school is not considered a magnet any longer, that historically what has happened in the district is that the enrollment doesn't go down, but it needs to be monitored. And that was a very big concern for Silverton. And so we were able to get some clarification on that. We did, and we do want to thank the Silverton Community Council, offered that they consistently support their school, and they have gifted them $100,000 over a multi-year period in support of Silverton, the community, and the students. And we were able to get a little bit of background about that, and it was a very moving meeting. We do have 3 action items that came out of that. This is, again, on page 4 of the minutes. One thing is that we're going to, as a committee, work on a formalized report regarding the work that we've done over the past few months, feels like years, but months, and some recommendations, if any, that we can kind of come to consensus around, and then some action steps moving forward. But 3 major action items that we, in addition to those, we are going to inform the administration that engagement is a concern at PRM and Silverton, and work with administration to help engage those communities more. The committee will inform the policy chair, Board Member Morosky, about reviewing policies that came up regarding LSTMC's engagement in magnet school selection. And then some of that work that they brought up does kind of pertain to policy. And then the last big request was that the committee will ask the administration to review the process for magnet school designation, and specifically for Silverton, as they do still have concerns. We are going to be talking about at our next meeting, May the 10th, which is a special meeting because of the concerns that did come out. We are meeting on May the 10th, which is this week, and then May the 25th, which is our regular monthly meeting, at both times at 4 o'clock. But we are going to talk about transportation requested data, instructional models for the middle years. That's like a 6, 7, 8 or 7, 8, 9, but specifically the junior high. Safety school zones, development of our initial report, and then again, here are some community concerns. So I do submit these as written, encourage the board members and the community to read them in their entirety, and I submit them as written.
Thank you very much, Dr. Moffitt. Do we have any questions for the Ad Hoc Attendance Boundaries Committee? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt both of the reports we heard this evening?
So move.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Is there a second? Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. We've had our discussion. Would you call the vote, or all in favor signify by saying aye?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Committee reports are adopted. We'll move next to item G and hear our one presentation this evening, which is about equity.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to share just where we are in terms of next steps with equity. We know that our board has been a forerunner in anti-racism and policies that connect to the equity. So we want to give an update for where we are currently. So there is no expectation that you are to read the little pages there, but that just references the policies that go along with the information that we are looking at tonight. So, of course, our policies paint the path towards the future. We've started with our working definition of DEI, which was developed October 26th of 2015. And this provides working definitions for our district for diversity, equity, inclusion, and excellence in education. And then moving forward, Equity and Excellence in Education Policy 2255 was revised March 15th of 2018. And this lays out a pathway to pursue a culture of equity and requires an annual equity plan. So that was in 2018. And then in 2020, Anti-Racism Policy 2256, a part of that was to create processes that identify any form of racism, work to counter its effects, and work to eliminate racist practices and policies from the district. So all of these policies are policies that are supporting equity, anti-racism, and inclusion. So highlights to date, just kind of going back from after the definitions, kind of looking at what was happening as for the equity policy, we want to highlight steps that we've taken so far towards implementation. So we have the policy that was done in 2017-18. And then in 2020, 2021, the anti-racism policy was completed during that time. And also there was the release of the African American literature course that was added in terms of curriculum. And then last school year, there was the anti-racism policy was incorporated into Safe Schools training so that all of our staff members were getting training on the anti-racism policy. So they had awareness of what the policy was. There were also more opportunities created for students to see themselves in other cultures affirmed in their learning. So for example, Black Music of America, ELA, SEL, and social justice standards were updated in terms of alignment. And so last year we also had a manager of DEI, and one of the things that person worked on was an audit that was done with Hamilton County ESC based on our Chief Murphy. After receiving that back, it was clear that there needed to be a lot more work that was done in terms of the audit. So at that time, the district did not choose to move forward with the information that was in the audit. So that's how we get to 22-23. So this year we've begun in-depth equity reviews with the instructional program audits, and you've seen those, and the link is also in this presentation. We did designate the Chief of Staff's role as the district's DEI officer, as well as launch targeted recruitment and pipeline development for teachers and leaders of color. So that is a work in progress. It's continuing to be the case. We are beginning to see more and more information that is rolling out in terms of this area. And also conducted instructional reviews at schools of highest need to target support and coaching. And so we're winding down on those instructional reviews at this time, but the presentation and the information that's coming from that does allow us to see across the board the snapshot of where we are currently in the district. So laying the infrastructure for full implementation and improvement. And so this is a process that really we're looking at over the next 6 to 12 months, so that we'll be focusing on strengthening and creating the foundation needed to bring the policies fully to life throughout the district. So while we've had the policies, I think collectively we would say that we're seeing glimmers of where the policy could be in effect or could have impact, but we do want to make certain that there's strategy that goes with that, and there's also clarity for what's being done in each of the spaces. So between June and September, we want to make sure that we have a comprehensive analysis of access and outcomes across a range of equity factors, including those listed in the policy. Also making certain that there is extensive quantitative analysis paired with qualitative synthesis. So not just what we're doing numerically in those areas, but what kind of quality information and feedback are we getting in those spaces to make certain that we're able to use that as a part of the plan moving forward. And looking to seek a third party that really has expertise in the area, so that as we're aligning collectively with both the policy and the expectations for how we move forward in the space for equity. And then from August to October, looking at the index, so a tool used to demonstrate differences in need across schools, looking at the guiding of resources. We know that we have started with the equity work around resources and resource allocation, but continue to ensure this so that we make sure that the work that we're doing is closer to what needs to be done in terms of budgeting and equity alignment. And take into account student factors, school factors, and community factors that may have implications as we're talking about budget allocations as well as other resource allocations, for example, personnel. And lastly, it's kind of overlap, but between September and December as well, really move into codifying the plan for next steps around equity. So the strategies and actions needed to achieve equity across our district as defined through our policy, including specific expectations from the policies and align it with the district strategic plan, and also a process for continuous review and improvement, continually review and update for maximum impact and alignment. One of the things that we also thought would really be important in this space, because the board was really forward thinking in creating a policy in this area, also making certain that we have a task force that will advise and guide the work, and giving board members opportunity to provide recommendations for community members that would be those that would be the best individuals to help assist in this area, so that as we're going through the auditing, we're going through the indexing, and we're getting to the planning, we're doing that with a lens from the board around those that would be the best tasked to help us in this area. So our next steps in terms of priorities for our upcoming school year, kind of listing out the 2 to 3 months secure board appointments, and that's recommendations. I say appointments, that sounds so formal, or recommendations as we launch the equity task force. Look at the RFP for a comprehensive equity audit, and then secure any board approvals if it becomes necessary for an audit contract. There are some places that do provide auditing in the area of equity, and we want to do some exploration there so that we see what's available. So if that's with a fee, we want to be prepared to do that. And then 3 to 6 months after that, level setting the language of equity and anti-racism in the district, building on the existing board definitions. So lifting those from the page, moving them into action as we look at the work that we're doing in the district. Continuing to socialize beginning to socialize our findings from the equity audit throughout our community, and that's within our school community and our larger community as we align around our understanding and our expectation as a school organization of equity. And support the LSDMC chairs to begin to implement their responsibilities related to the anti-racism policy. So in the anti-racism policy, as the board likely knows, but for the good of the public, there is an expectation that the LSDMCs will work around anti-racism and identifying areas of anti-racism that they could focus on in the school building. There has been some feedback from LSDMCs about what is the best way to do that, and what is a way to do that so that it is aligned with other expectations. So really beginning to give more support in that area. And adjust and provide supports for campuses based on instructional reviews for areas of growth, and as we again think about resources of budget and resources of personnel. And in the 6 to 9 months, further modify the equity index, which would be implemented to help guide our budgetary and resource allocations into our 24-25 school year. And again, develop, finalize, and begin implementation of our overall equity plan. So that just gives us some brief updates around equity, again, moving from policy into practice as we look at next steps for equity.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. Are there questions or discussion points from board members? Ms. Bolton.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know, since you just celebrated your anniversary, I don't know if I've said this. First of all, congratulations, but I don't know. I know I've not said this in public meeting, I'm a little disappointed here. First time I've seen a report during your superintendency that made me want some more.
Okay.
I think it's probably personal frustration more than anything because we've been at this as a board, as you point out, since 2017, and would suggest that with the exception of the wonderful programmatic audit that you and your folks did, your team did, that's been really a part of our efforts in ad hoc to really assess each of the schools. It seems like we're still kind of stymied and running in place on equity. And I know it's and I think we've done made some movement on the anti-racism piece, and I feel strongly about that. But the equity piece, I don't know if I'm sure we have to study it more, but I'm really tired of studying it and tired of talking about it. And we know that you've been leading the charge on this equity piece, and I don't see that here. And my interest is that some of the stuff that's come up in the budget discussion has really been about equity, whether it's concentrating on the expenditure per school that has come up, or whether it's how we do Title I. A lot of that budget stuff has actually garnered a lot more conversation on equity, as well it should, with the, figuring out how to distribute the resources in an equitable way. I think, too, for this, I think the emphasis on the equity is how it impacts, especially with our lack of support from Columbus, who people have to understand are not helping the children of Greater Cincinnati at all. That we are doing things that the state actually probably doesn't want us to do. They're very much a part of our equity plan and equity policy, and we might be out of kilter with a lot of those folks in Columbus because we're talking about equity for all of our children and our teenagers and our families and our schools. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that overall picture, because you've also been doing an awful lot for any number of our kids. So I think I'd like to see a fuller report and maybe a little less, let's talk about it or examine it, although we have to do that. But I really think that you may not have captured everything that you've been doing or we've done. And I know this isn't aggressive enough for what we need to do. I think the last thing I'll say, if I can just take one more second here, Mr. President, I'm happy about inventories. I'm happy about audits. I don't know that I feel that strongly right now about a task force, because I think that task force ultimately lead to delay, and maybe I'm wrong about that. But I just think we've studied and studied, and we're in a place in our budget and a place in our policy and a place in your leadership that we could be going much further, faster, and which we usually don't have to ask you to do. But I think we lead the state on this, and we're among the best in the country, and we can do better than this, and I know you want to too.
Thank you, Ms. Bolden. Other board members, comments or questions? Ms. Jones.
Yes, my comment, I hear what, and I agree. I kind of got lost in really trying to understand the task force situation. And especially because it says each board member recommends a person. And I think we have sort of laid the foundation over time around all this stuff. And I'm not opposed to a task force, but I think we're limiting ourselves to what the capabilities are in educating ourselves. If we're going to do a full equity audit, what does that mean? Not knowing what that means, not knowing how the task force will be involved in helping us or helping even to guide the work. So I'd be curious to know a little more about that and why perhaps it's limited to 7 people from the community. So,
Thank you, Ms. Jones. We'll go Dr. Moffat, followed by, was that Mrs. Weinberg?
So I think it's a good foundation, but I know that as a person who does DEI work, it could be far more aggressive than this. And so I wasn't confused about the equity task force as far as the need for it, but I am concerned about how it looks. Particularly when we have LSTMC chairs, like as a board, we received a letter from several chairs back in November asking about the anti-racism committee and wanting to fulfill that charge. That has been, to have that be in August through October is almost another year of delay that I just don't think is necessary. I think what the LSDMC chairs have been asking for, and I have this letter, and I definitely think it was sent to you, but they were waiting for the director of equity to be hired, which we now have that, and we got a little extra bang for our buck. But they had specific concerns around how to implement the work of the policy into their schools. So some of this has already been done. And when I thought of the task force, I thought it really, really needs to be utilization of the resources that are already existing. You have LSDMC chairs first of all, you have LSDMCs that make up community members and parents and teachers. That can be your task force. You have LSDMC chairs that are asking for how to implement this anti-racism policy. I don't think we need to recreate the wheel at all. I think we don't need to necessarily do a third-party audit. I'm kind of concerned about spending more money when we already have data on what some of our concerns are. So I think that we need training that is inclusive. I would love to see training that's inclusive of teachers and the chairs, because that's what they're asking for. That is exactly what they're asking for, and they're not getting that. And so I also wanted to see what I wanted to see was a work plan of activities that directly align with the policy and the district goals around achievement and enrollment. I think that this is great, but I would like to see where are the inequities in our school buildings academically. I want that type of stuff. I used to do cultural audits for a few schools, and they are wanting cultural audits of their building to find out what work needs to be done within their buildings. But if we ask them, if we involve those LSDMCs, those PTAs, those admins, they will tell us what the problem has been historically and be able to give some guidance on, I think, developing a work plan that aligns with the policies that you've stated, and it ties to our district goals, which also would align with our goals and our guardrails. And so, for me, it just needed to have more meat that was relevant to what our district has done and where we want to go with regard to those policies, rather than to bring in additional people to come in and tell us what that is. I would love to see more involvement with our community members, our LSDMCs, and our parents. I just didn't see that. But I do think it's a great start. I just am looking for an action plan.
Thank you, Dr. Moffat. Mrs. Weinberg.
Yeah, I was just going to add, in terms of the only thing that I would say in terms of the task force, I actually like that idea. I just think that we would need to utilize more people in the community, our staff, our parents, and things like that. So that would just be my one thing that I did notice after reading through with this, is concern for making sure that the task force would be inclusive to all.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. Mr. Craig.
So I want to kind of add a couple of thoughts onto it, and I think it's actually tying a little bit into what Board Member Bolton talked about earlier, which is that I think one of the struggles that we've had as a district is we don't know what we have as a district, right? Until we did a programming audit, we didn't know what programs were at what schools. And so we do, our career tech is audit. We don't know what career tech's being offered and what's programming and that type of deal. And so I think there's 2 levels of equity that we look at when we do discussion of equity. And one is are we providing equitable services and programming, and then are we giving equitable benefits to our students, right? So is every student receiving an opportunity that's somewhat equitable, and then are we providing programming in a way that makes it able to be provided or able to be reached by more folks? And so one of the concerns that, in a recent conversation we had with some public parents was about that idea about the services and quality of programming in the schools where they were limited to because of having to stay within a certain boundary area, right? And these type of things. So I think we've done a lot of that part. And to Board Member Bolton's point, that's a lot more than maybe what's listed here. And it is a lot about what builds our budget. I think the question then becomes, based on that information, what do we do to provide greater equity in what we provide in order to ensure that more students have an equitable opportunity for education? Because I think that is the other struggle and other difficulties, that there's other things that factor into equity, like the environment that you grew up in, like the community and the neighborhood that you're in. We know for a fact that your zip code matters more to your educational outcomes than almost any other factor. It's a given fact. And so I think that's some of the struggles that we're going to deal with as a district long term, is that we're going to have schools in certain areas that, unfortunately, even things about walkability of a neighborhood. The neighborhood's very walkable and everybody's able to walk around, it's not as big a deal. If you're in an area where you're on you're next to a high-speed road, or you're next to a difficult traffic area, that's an equity issue, even though we may not always classify it and think about it as an equity issue. So I do think there's a lot in what you provided to us that I'm looking forward to seeing what's the next steps in that. I do want to make sure that we also talk about, when we think about task force, is that there are a lot of folks who bring ideas to the table and bring history to the table, and I think those are all important, but also that we need to make sure that we are framing the conversation around solutions that can be done, as opposed to just what have we always done or what doesn't work. I think that's my concern sometimes with task forces, is we spend more time talking about what we didn't do right the last time than what we need to do right the next time. And so I think giving task force a kind of an action to go with, right, an expectation to provide some support and understanding as to, do these solutions work? Will these solutions have a benefit? Are they of value? Is a good thing for a task force to do. Asking a task force just to meet and talk about equity in our district is not probably going to get you a whole lot of things you can take away from it. And so I think that's the true concern there, is there a launching point from which the task force would provide that assistance and guidance? And so I think all of this, I'm struck to hear a few folks talk about we need to go move faster. But I love that fact that we are committing ourselves to doing something not many other districts in the state are doing, not many other districts in the country are doing. And to be quite honest, we are doing something that requires all of us to be really examining what all of us can do to build more equity, whether that's teachers, students, staff, whoever, into that process.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. I'll share a couple thoughts, and then if other folks have a second item, just let me know, and then we'll turn it back over to the superintendent. I think, one of the topics that's come up is how, how quickly are we moving forward on some of these things? And I think from my perspective, I just want us to move as quickly on this as we can do it well. And if that means that we can start tomorrow, I think we should start tomorrow. If that means there's really important more studying and work we need to do, because if we don't, we're not going to do the work well. I would certainly support that. But to move as quickly and as urgently on this as we can do it well. Another topic that's come up is this question of third-party help, whether that's an audit, or I saw the footnote about Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center in there. I happen to think getting help from folks who know more about things than we do and have had success elsewhere is healthy and good for us and for children. This is just share my perspective on that. And then, longer term, I was just pulling up the goals and guardrails that we approved back in December. We have so many good tools in this district. I love our equity policy. I proudly voted to support our anti-racism policy. Our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is also apparent in the goals and guardrails we have. And I'll give you just 3 examples. One of our goals is about closing the gap in reading performance in 6th grade based on race. that's a big deal in my opinion. I'm so proud that we want to focus on that and move that forward. Another goal we set has to do with narrowing the gap in post-secondary outcomes that we see based on race in CPS. I'm so proud that that's something we're going to focus on and try to move forward. Even in the guardrails, we talk about shrinking discipline disparities that we see based on race. And so, for my part, I hope that we can spend more and more of our time as a board looking at whether we're actually getting movement on student outcomes on those really, really important figures for kids and families and for the city. But I do think that moving as quickly as we can move forward well on our commitment to anti-racism are things that are really important. Maybe Superintendent give you a chance to share, and then if board members have other thoughts too, we can get a second round.
Sure. I do appreciate all of the feedback that was provided about the updates. And I would like to start by saying that this is just a form of updates. Rob, if you'll go back to the slide with the dates on it. One of the things that was really important, if we'll stop right here. So if we notice just the progression of information, some of the things that are discussed right now are things that we've actually put into place this year. It was mid last week before anyone shared that there had been an equity audit that had been performed by an organization that the district decided that they were not comfortable with the information because it didn't have enough depth, and so therefore it was not used for next steps. When we think about an equity plan, there has not been an equity plan that has been provided yet that we've actually had a codified plan that has been utilized as called for in the actual policy. So maybe that was something that we put in place. Maybe it was a part of a plan that was somewhere, but in terms of looking at how that was moved from this is the policy to implementation, that's not something that we've been able to actually determine, discuss, and codify. So in thinking about, having led this work before, there are different levels of equity as we're thinking about it. And of course, we're thinking about equity that's happening at the school level, equity that's happening in budgeting, equity that's happening in resourcing, but there's also operational equity. What's happening in something, for example, like magnet schools and how students are being assigned to magnet schools or who has access to what programs. So thinking about this work very, very deeply is where it comes from with the thought around auditing and why auditing is important. Starting last May and picking up at that point, we really began to ask questions around what had already been done in this space because the board had done such robust policy work around this actual thing, right? And so what's been done there? And so there's had been work that had been done around the beginnings of thinking about budgeting and how we're trying to get to equity in terms of budgeting. And so this year we were able to look at really taking that to another level, but trying to get to something that becomes like what you're referencing, Board Member Bolton, more specific, more concrete around next steps. That's what we're looking for. In terms of the task force piece, this conversation altogether has been fascinating and helpful for me. And as you said earlier, and I think I heard a few people reference the same, going fast has not ever been a challenge for me in terms of what we're looking at in terms of what's happening next. But trying to also receive feedback in the space and knowing how important this is. This was one of the areas that I thought, in working with the team, that it would be important because the board had more background for the community in terms of who would be responsible in terms of doing what and who may be great voices to get to the table. Not just to maybe it's better to call it a working group, not just to get to the table and talk about what has been done or what hasn't been done, but really in a broader sense, how we're looking at equity in our school district, but also how we're looking at equity that might be able to benefit the work that we're doing across the community. So open either way in terms of that, but I do hear, and I'm pleased to hear that information that we provided previous to now around all of the other areas has led the expectation around this space. This was just an opportunity to try to give an update to where we are and where we're looking to go next. In terms of the LSDMCs and the request around work and protocols for the anti-racism next steps, having done DEI work, I know those that have done that work before, like I have, would definitely support that it is also important to have some kind of consistency in protocols that you're using so that you're also able to do the appropriate training, making certain that there is a level of comfort, because across the board, that is not always the case. So we'll take the information in terms of feedback. We have reviewed once we received it mid last week, we reviewed the audit that was done before. The reason that we reference children's here is because there is an opportunity for us to do some partner work with them as they've done with the district in the past. But I don't think it's something that has to take a complete year because we have a lot of information already, but we do want to make certain that when we come out with an overall implementation plan, it is something that we're able to move into, we're able to monitor, and we're able to see it in our actions. So I do appreciate all of the feedback, and in terms of the updates, these are just highlights, but we'll make sure that we provide the necessary information as we move forward.
Thank you very, very much, Superintendent. Are there any other last comments or questions from board members? Ms. Bolton.
Yeah, thank you for the response. Real quickly, just initial, having looked at the draft report regarding the strategic plan and the goals and guardrails and the working groups, probably if in that draft there's an even more emphasis placed on sort of the equity piece, because it's there, and I think that would be helpful. And as we get ready to do the vision, mission, and forecasting, there's another opportunity where we could, kind of rededicate ourselves and get more specific and what have you. So I think those are two opportunities just in the next 30 days or so where we can kind of recommit regarding equity.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Did I interrupt?
No, just thank you for that, and I would concur that it's in much of what we're doing, but really trying to come back and do a codified plan for it that we're able to work through, I think is something that we could add to what we're looking at with the strategic plan.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Okay, we'll move on to item H, which is the superintendent of schools. Do we have any retirements this evening?
We have two retirees this evening, excuse me. First up is our certificated staff, which would be Pamela J. Rowling, a teacher from Robert A. Taft Information Technology High School. And then last, we have our civil service, Joy Laurel, paraprofessional from College Hill Fundamental Academy. We just want to thank them for their years of service. We want to thank them for their commitment to this district and to the students, and we want to wish them well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adopt the recommendations of the superintendent this evening?
So moved.
Thank you, Vice President Craig. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. Any discussion on the recommendations?
I do have one.
Dr. Moffitt.
So under recommendation 3, there's for staff professional development. I'm trying to pull this up. I'll get to it. Let me just ask my question. So under recommendation 3, the recommendation 3 is for using ESSER funding for professional development. Is that from ESSER 2 or 3?
I think you're asking about the treasurer's report.
Oh, I'm sorry. I might be on the wrong one. Hold on one second. I think it's on the last page. Let me see.
Oh, okay.
I think it's page like 17 or 18 in the PDF.
I think it's 17.
ESSER 2 is already spent out. The only money we have left is ESSER 3. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, that's what I'm asking for. So this is for ESSER 3 money for professional development, right? I wanted to clarify that.
Thank you for clarification. So this is actually, this was funding that we had set aside for professional development that is coming up at this time. A part of that was from ESSER, but there are also Title I dollars that are available as well. So it's really more about the types of professional development that's being done, not necessarily the specific fund for it.
And what was the dollar amount for that one? Was that tied to the treasurer's report of that professional development?
Actually, this is actually having the professional development itself covered. When we did the initial recommendations for ESSER, we included that in those requests for ESSER. We just haven't used it at this point. So this is a combination. In the treasurer's report, there's the professional development providers, and then the additional funds. This is giving us the opportunity to pay our staff for actually attending the professional development.
Okay, so this isn't really a new ask.
No, it's not a new ask.
Okay. And I just wanted to know, and you said it's a combination of 2 and 3.
It's a combination, right? Because this is giving us the opportunity to pay staff for the professional development. And in the treasurer's report, we have the completed RFPs that we've done for this, for the different trainings that we're looking to offer staff. But here, I'm requesting for us to be able to pay staff voluntarily that attend the training during the summer for these particular areas. It's title and ESSER. Yeah, that's it, both.
So it just needs to reflect title and ESSER grant dollars in here. Is that right? It's title and ESSER?
Yes, we can update it. Actually, we just need to update it, really saying using available funds, because it depends. There's sometimes leadership development that we can use with a different type of title funds. So we'll make the update so that it says with available funding.
Okay.
And I think there's a motion from Mr. Craig and a proposed amendment from Dr. Moffett that it read instead of ESSER available grant funds. Is that right?
Available funding.
Available funding.
Yes.
Is that a friendly amendment, Vice President Craig?
That's a very friendly amendment.
And title. Add the title. I mean, add title. Not the title, but title. Is it title funding?
We just added available funding because
I think that would be
title,
inclusive
it could
of.
be grant, it could be any available funds for PD.
Any other discussion on the superintendent's recommendations? Ms. Wagner, would you call the vote on the amended superintendent's recommendations, please?
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Moffett?
Yes.
Mrs. Weinberg?
Yes.
President Lindy?
Yes, thank you very much. Do we have a motion to adopt the Do we have a motion to adopt the treasurer's revised treasurer's report this evening?
And may I request a revision before, or do I need to wait until after?
We'll get it on the,
Okay.
and then we'll do the same process. So is there a motion to adopt the revised treasurer's report?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Jones. Now, under discussion, it sounds like we might have a proposed amendment.
We do. I have a correction first. That's on page 19, item J. They picked up the wrong vendor name. It should read American Sound and Electronics and not Greats.
Can you just say that one more time, Treasurer?
Yes, page 19, item J. The vendor name should read American Sound and Electronics.
Okay. Ms. Bolton, is that a friendly amendment?
Yes, very friendly. Very friendly treasurer.
Excellent. Superintendent, was there an additional amendment?
There is one more. I would like to just hold one of the contracts that's recommended here for leading educators for professional development. Want to hold that just for a bit more review before bringing it back to the board.
Is that also a friendly amendment, Ms. Bolton?
That's a very friendly, she's a friendly superintendent.
We have two friendly amendments. So the revised treasurer's report is on the floor as amended. Any other discussion on the amended treasurer's report? Ms. Bolton.
Yeah, just a clarification from, thank you, Superintendent, for that revision, and thanks for the explanation, Treasurer. The Roman numeral 8, I believe, if I remember my College Hill elementary teaching, where we're talking in terms of the restorative practices, or what's the right word, international. Did we vote on that already previously, correct?
Yes. Yeah, so the bid document, this is a correction to what you already approved. They just used the wrong calendar year. Instead of 23, they put 22. Right. So they're correcting that.
And for the leading educators, we voted only for the beginning of that contract. That's not been voted on in its entirety yet, correct?
Based on the information that's in there, it says there was a very small $30,000 contract to do something. I'm not sure what. But the recommendation to amend that to the larger amount has been pulled from the floor.
Okay, so we're not voting on that because of the movement of the superintendent. And and we can, I have no other issues, treasurers.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bolton. Any other discussion or questions on the amended treasurer's report? Dr. Moffett.
I have a question about the wording on the end of those contracts. It was about the one that's been pulled, but it's also in this one under item 8, Roman numeral 8, with that great education. The wording that says after the initial term, CPS reserves the right to renew and agreement from this RFP at the board's discretion for 1 additional year. Is that standard language, and would that be at the amount that is listed? So they would get another $1 million, rounding it up in this particular?
I wouldn't say it's standard, but we use it often enough when we negotiate a multi-year contract, and we leave ourselves a window of opportunity to extend that if things are going superbly well, and we don't want to change out vendors at, in the 3rd or 4th year. So it's not standard, it's allowable, and we use it on occasion. And I think it, correct me if I'm wrong, legal counsel, Mr. Hoying, at the end of that renewal, to extend it for 1 more year, the value of that could be renegotiated. It doesn't automatically roll over the same amount. Okay.
So I do remember, and again, I'm getting a little gray here. So we had a discussion some time ago, and I don't remember if it was in finance or if it was in our financial town halls, about removing automatic renewal of contracts because of this very thing, getting into being bound contractually to a specific dollar amount. I'm concerned, and I guess that's what made me, the $2.6 million one was really what highlighted me, but we're removing that one. But this particular one, any one contract that we have that wording in there, that we are renewing, it has the potential to automatically renew.
It doesn't, it's not automatic.
Okay.
It says at the board's discretion. So what we would do was come back to the board and say, this is how this contract is performing, and we would like to extend it for 1 more year.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Again, my question is still a little relevant and live on the floor, because I think my question would be, what type of assessment would there be that we as a board could say, okay, well, hey, or even just the administration could say, hey, they didn't do this, or they did do this, or because that wording just is concerning to me, that there is an inference that that we're talking about large dollar amounts, and that they're just automatically coming back. Like, what's the process for this? I'm also concerned, I have a question about the RFP process. Who's reviewing that? And particularly because the other one that we're pulling had the $36,000 award, and then it showed at the end of the treasurer's report the list of vendors, and they were one of many that put the RFP in, but they won the award, and then they weren't the lowest and they weren't the highest. So what's that process?
So let me answer the first question first. So, we stood up a new operation in the treasurer's office with a contract administrator, and we went through 884 contracts and looked at all and tried to identify what the performance was on all of them. That was things that were already in place. As new contracts come before the board, starting with the new fiscal year, in the treasurer's report, you will see we're going to authorize a treasurer to contract with vendor XYZ for this purpose, and these are the measures that we're going to hold them accountable to. And so then as our annual process, will go through and identify, did they meet those measures? It's all very public, very transparent, and we'll go through it through finance committee like we did, but we're still in startup mode, so we had to go back to the old contracts first to set a new process in place. So that's the answer to number 1. Number 2, did you want to add anything to that? No. Okay. I don't know if our COO would like to speak to this since it's in his shop, but my experience with RFPs is they're managed by the purchasing department. A team is formed to determine what the scope of work that wants to be bid out. And when that scope of work is defined, they define how they're going to score responses. So they predetermine what the measures are going to be and what the weightings are. Sometimes the highest weighting is price, sometimes it's experience, and sometimes it's other factors, local, but that team determines what that matrix, decision matrix is going to look like the scorecard. When the answers come in or the proposals come in, that team goes and they look at every single one and they score it individually. How did this vendor come according to these pre-identified measures? It becomes a mathematical calculation. RFPs, you don't have to take the lowest bid, correct? Because it might not be the best thing for the districts, right? And so there should be plenty of documentation of how they arrived at the vendor they arrived to.
And I'll also add in terms of that. So in terms of, for example, one that we were talking about tonight, Leading Educators, which is a vendor that provides standards training for ELA and math teachers. So as a part of that RFP team, it's inclusive of not just central office staff, but it's inclusive of principals, inclusive of representatives from CFT, populations of teachers that are included as well. So it goes through several different iterations. Generally, it starts with a review of the information based on what the scope of work would be for the RFP. And then from there, it looks at, based on what we've asked for as a district, what is the scoring for that? Each individual score, each person scores individually. And then after that, they come together, have discussion around what it is that we need. If there is the need for the vendor to come in and do a presentation, they do it with that same body. And so from that process, then a recommendation is given in the So it is a pretty robust process because we do have to be able to share with the vendor if there are any questions about why the vendor did not get the bid. We do have to be able to share with them why one vendor got the bid over a different vendor.
Welcome. Any other questions or discussion on the treasurer's report? Ms. Bolton.
This is a follow-up to what Dr. Moffett mentioned, and nobody will be surprised when I say this. You'll recall that I've been concerned about how we maintained, not we, even you, or even this administration, maintained the Iowa test with extending it then the board never saw that 4th year of extension. I think we even checked to make sure. So I do worry about something where we do in language say that we have that opportunity, and I just want to make sure that in full transparency, not happened in your administration, but in previous administration, it happened where we had a 4th year of something and us not necessarily agreeing or doing that, but I think that's important. If there's process to protect us from that happening, it'd be great.
And I do, thank you, Board Member Bolton. President, if it's okay to share, I do want to add, just reiterate what our treasurer shared, that adding the language that's added gives us the opportunity to bring it back before the board, but it's not an absolute. There's really not a contract that doesn't have a provision in it for us to cancel that contract with appropriate notice. Even if there is a fee that goes along with it. And we've had some situations where that's happened on the nominal end, but there is not one that we cannot as a district really get out of that contract. So in terms of adding this information in, there is no expectation for dollar amount. Even when we're thinking about these vendors that we're talking about right now, there is a training plan that is put in place for a process, a period of time that will allow us to get our staff members trained. And then after that, you're really only looking at training new staff members, until there is a change, that there's a need to train everyone again. So there is no absolute. I just want to reiterate that there is not an absolute. There is not an absolute for dollar amount. And it is important that we do share that at the end of the time, we do not have to re-engage in contract. It does just give us an opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Any other last questions on our treasurer's amended report for this evening? Ms. Wagner, would you call the vote, please?
Ms. Bolton?
For the revised, aye.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Moffett? Mrs. Weinberg?
Yes.
President Lindy?
Yes, thank you very much. We are now entering the next item on our agenda, which I believe is board matters. We have 5 of these this evening. First from Member Jones on student outcomes monitoring.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think this probably won't take longer than 5 minutes, but my board colleagues, we all went through the self-evaluation process at the last board meeting. And one of the things that I think we learned from that, or we didn't discover, we knew that on one of the categories on the monitoring and accountability piece, that basically we've not been able to do anything to move forward in that area, and that is normal. So what I did in thinking about the student, the CAL work plan, is I asked to have a phone conversation with Cindy about that process. And I did that because the way the work plan is worded now, and I was going to present it to the policy committee to insert it into the policy committee edits. But there are some things about the work plan that we probably need to change, to modify. It's not what I call, it's not a lot of stuff. And Cindy and I talked about it, and one of the things she said to me, which I totally agree with, is our CAL agenda must absolutely focus on the goals and guardrails. And so there are a couple of things in there where there's question. I mean, there's question about, does this belong here? What do we do with it if it doesn't belong here, and what have you? So I didn't get a chance to make those edits to look at it tonight. But what I was hoping to do is to go ahead and make those edits and incorporate them in the bylaws review, and then folks can see it in that context, and we can have a discussion about it at that time. Unless people have questions tonight about it, but it really is the aim is to really focus the work plan on working toward achieving the goals and the guardrails. So I wanted to inform the board about that. If you have any questions, outstanding questions right now, I'm happy to try to address those, but that's where we are. I'd also like the superintendent, I didn't know, because we had conversations, I didn't know if you wanted to weigh in on that. Okay.
Thank you, Member Jones. I have one comment question, but other board members would like to go first. Dr. Moffitt?
So I do agree with one thing that you shared, Board Member Jones, Craig, I don't know what we call you today, but I think that the CAL should absolutely encompass the goals and guardrails, but we also deal with things that are outside of the goals and guardrails. And so what I feel, and again, this is, strictly my opinion, we are in the Council of Great City Schools has been very, very successful in helping to usher this in. We are honing in on a certain number of things, and I think that that's great, but we are also responsible for other things. And we're getting further and further away from what the original work plan of this student achievement looked like, which included updates to lobbying, which included updates to health and safety items, which included updates to maybe some facilities or things like that. I completely appreciate the work of the Council of Great City Schools, and I think that they definitely add value. But I also think that we need to make certain that we are honoring our commitment to be responsible, to be aware of other areas that we are responsible to. What has happened, and it's very disappointing to me, is that we are utilizing the committee of the whole for other things other than student achievement. And so what happens is we get behind on awareness of issues, particularly safety, particularly, we've had quite a few emails on the safety of our schools. Those are things that we are responsible for and that we don't have time to talk about. I believe that we should have time within our meetings to do some interim progress monitoring. I think that comes with the territory of their governance training to have, we should be talking about the superintendent's interim guardrails and things of that nature. That should be the time where we are succinctly talking about goals and guardrails, but we also have other areas that we need to be dealing with. And so I would love to see that CAL agenda incorporate the other areas of responsibility and be inclusive more in totality.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. I want to hear, if there are other board members who have not gone yet, I want to bring in other voices. I promise I'll give you a chance to respond. Yeah, Ms. Jones, I promise we'll come back.
If I have to wait, I won't remember.
I know, but I do, I want to just check, because
respond
anybody who's not
directly
gone
to
yet,
Dr.
I want to share. Yes, Superintendent.
I may be able to add one point of clarity, thinking about what Board Member Moffitt just shared. So as we looked at the work plan for this year, and that was just brought to the board, I want to say a few board meetings ago, it was inclusive of a review of and monitoring the goals and guardrails, but also those other areas that the board thought important to overall student achievement as a part of that calendar, or part of the topics that we would cover. And so one of the things that we've done that we plan to share at the next CAL meeting is, now that we've done that and it's been approved at the board level, we can share at least a tentative plan for which board meetings we plan to cover those things in, that are also they're supportive of the goals and guardrails, but they're also supportive of some of those other topics that Board Member Moffitt is referencing. So I don't know that it's an either or. I think that it's a heavier focus on the both and, where it's the consistent monitoring of the goals and guardrails, but also those other topics that are a part of the work plan are included in that monitoring and presentation plan as well. So if I didn't clarify that part in the response, I'm sorry that I omitted that.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you.
Okay, so I hear what the superintendent is saying, and what I will say is, and it's going to be at the will of the board how we do this. The way that the superintendent defined it is what we did. We did that, and we took everybody's feedback and incorporated. I think, and when I spoke with Cindy, I mean, certainly they, I won't say they have a totally different perspective about us, but they do. I mean, they are saying to us that if you are truly going to do service to the student achievement piece and the outcomes, that this is, we should be directing our focus on the goals and guardrails exclusively. Now, what I will say is, and let me add this, that their work with us around how we monitor and do that, she said they anticipate that it might start in the fall. So we got some time in there. So I want to say a couple of things. One is, when we agreed to change the work plan, we said, and I can remember conversations about this, we said that it will not look like the old Student Achievement Committee. We said that. Secondly, when I went back, I took everybody's feedback and I went back and I looked at all the other work plans. There's a great deal of overlap in terms of some of the areas of responsibility. There's a great deal of overlap across all the other committees. And no, I agree with Dr. Moffitt. We do have to make sure that those get addressed. It doesn't have to get addressed in 2 committees or 3 committees. It has to be addressed. So we have to find where that medium is for that. There's also, the superintendent spoke to the calendar, and that is one of the things that Cindy said, that, and she said we would work with the superintendent around developing a calendar of specific dates and topics and all that. And I'll use the example, I think Dr. Moffitt used the example of safety. Well, it could be appropriate that a safety report come to this committee, but the overall work plan in terms of being sort of, quote, responsible for the safety area lies with the Health and Safety Committee, and it's in their work plan. And so I think what I'm asking is, we as a board have to make a decision whether we're going to have this be a fidelity piece, a fidelity factor in making sure that we do what we agreed to do with the Council of Great City Schools, or whether we're going to do it some other way. And like I said, whatever the will of the board is, that's what it is. But it is going to involve some change. It's going to involve some change in thinking or whatever. But what you will see in the edits are not major shifts. There might be one or two things that I'm pretty sure people will notice and comment on, but they're not any major shifts in what's in there now. So I'll make sure that gets in the edits for people's review.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. I know Mr. Craig has a comment. I have a quick one. We'll get everybody else to.
Just wanted to kind of also highlight, one of the things that we talked about when we were doing student achievement is the fact that so much of some stuff that was in student achievement overlapped and was getting covered by other parts. And in part, maybe it was also because nobody was doing it, so folks had to pick up the ball and do it. But I think as we also think about this from our bylaws perspective, each of the committees were asked to also, and I know Board Member Bolton had raised this about some of the other stuff with their strategic plan as well, but each of our committees were really supposed to be looking at what we are doing and what is our ultimate goal and what our responsibilities are on the committee to ensure that things are represented and dealt with. And I think this is, again, a great example of putting it into our bylaws, what the committees are focused to do. Because some things absolutely will touch on multiple different areas and they'll have different connections, but ultimately maybe that focal point is within a different, the greater topic is within a different committee, but the specifics of something might fall within a committee thing. So for instance, there's some finance policies that originate out of budget, finance, and growth that then move to finance to ultimately be authored, written, put into place. That doesn't mean that every finance thing, every policy that deals with money ever will come to budget and finance in the same way. There's specific things like that. And so I think that's a good way to separate out some of those things within the bylaws and within the committee structures to make sure that we're not having 3 committees asking about the same stuff and basically, kind of using up time that could be used towards other things.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Ms. Bolton.
Yes, I actually can see the wisdom of really concentrating on the goals and guardrails in student achievement rather than us doing it in a number of committees. I think that would, because we're all there together and that they're all basically instructional, top flight goals and guardrails. But whatever was previously part of student achievement will, as I think everybody's saying, has to be absorbed elsewhere if it still is a valid priority. And I think we can do that. And I think it might be better, but I think a concentrated effort on the goals and guardrails, since we have actual alignment there and we've made a number of year commitment to it, I would prefer it be there than rather us divvy it out among different committees, different parts of it. I think it makes sense. But that's about it for Great City Schools and me, though. I can't be too happy with them all the time.
I understand you have a t-shirt. Ms. Weinberg, I do want to get a word in. I'm happy to go, but you're good. So we can move on here in a second. I just wanted to share, for my part, from a process perspective, I think where Member Jones started is the right place for us to end. All of this will be decided through the process of looking at the bylaw revisions. So no decision tonight. This is a great discussion, but we have a decision process. We will play that process out, and whatever decision is made over the course of that bylaw review, that'll create the clarity, I think, for us and for the administration. And I'm glad that process is moving. I think for my part, when I'm looking at proposed bylaw changes or committee scope, I want to challenge myself and challenge all of us to move less on inputs and outputs and more on outcomes. I think this is one of the themes that came from the self-evaluation from before. And I do believe that the more things we try to do and the more things we try to monitor, the more we dilute our time and the more we dilute the administration's time. And so this is just me speaking for myself, but when I look at our bylaws and the proposed changes and the proposed committee scopes, I'd like to challenge myself to do less and focus more.
so that we get more lift on the things that truly matter. And I think that's harder. It's easy to try and do everything, in my perspective, and to maybe not make as much progress there. And so I'm going to be challenging myself to try to focus more and maybe even do less. So we have a process, and we'll talk more about that as we go. We'll move on to the second board matters item, which is from Dr. Moffitt on mayor meeting with elected officials from the board.
Yeah, I think this was one of 4, but this one stayed on there. There was I was just reading I made this request because I was reading about in the weekly update to the board members that there was going to be an upcoming meeting with the mayor. And so I thought that that was open for board members to attend if they wanted to. That obviously caused quite a bit of confusion, and we needed to have a discussion here. So that was what I think your response, President Lindy, was that was just going to be a meeting with yourself and the superintendent, and I just wanted clarification.
Thanks, Board Member Moffitt. I think I wanted to be able to ask to some folks who've been on the board longer than I have about, this is not something I have a strong opinion about. I just like there to be a clear process. My understanding was that if the superintendent's going to meet with the mayor's office, good to invite the board president to join so that person can share an update with the rest of the board about what was discussed in that meeting. That's what I had been trying to do so far. There have been cases where I've been unable to attend. I extended that invitation to Vice President Craig. I'm very open to whatever policy or procedure we want to have as a board. I just wanted it to be a clear one. So can I ask Member Jones or Member Bolden, like, is there a...
You were looking at me.
I'm looking for some
Well,
historical perspective.
I think the historical perspective that I can offer is that we begin, I think the impetus of establishing sort of a standard of operation between us and City Hall or City Council came when we were trying to deal with the tax abatement situation. And at that time, we established, it actually began even farther back than that historically, because we had a collaborative, where we had the board met with City Council on a quarterly basis, and we had a shared agenda, which is what Dr. Moffitt leads us on now. But with the tax abatement process, when that came about and we began to do some planning and things around that, we established a sort of a standard protocol for how we would work through that, and it sort of carried through other situations. And that protocol was that when we're conducting business with the city, that we would conduct it at the appropriate levels, that being board to council and administration to administration. Now, it was very helpful that we had this quarterly meeting, because then it became everybody being involved in at the table, everybody, administration, council members, and board on a shared agenda. And that's what we have in place now. So that's the historical context of it. Now, what I will say is that there is nothing in our bylaws or rules, there's no standard of practice that precludes any one of us from meeting with a council member if they want to meet with us. I don't think anything precludes us from doing that. And I know we all have, I believe. But the issue is, we know that for board members, and this would hold true for the superintendent, I would think as well, is that when we're conducting business, that there are not decisions that are being made that aren't first addressed at the board level. And so that's what I would say. That I said anybody can meet with them. You know, if somebody were to call me and say, can I have a meeting with you, I would go. That's relationship building, but that's the historical context that I can offer. Ms. Bolton may be able to offer something additional.
But additionally, first of all, it makes sense for us that we have networking or whatever, or relationships with other elected officials on an individual basis about particular things. That makes complete sense as we do. It'd be great to more formalize those mutual meetings again. I think that would be helpful. But historically, I can recall, and this would have been my first year on the board, which is 16 years ago. I was here, and I think Ms. Davis was in the room too, and Mrs. Blackwell, who was superintendent, walked across the hall and said, were you available on a particular, and it was a date and a time. And I said, well, yes, ma'am, if you need me to be, well, the mayor wants to meet about Chase School and the community issues regarding the building of Chase School, because it's built on kind of an aquifer, which is a problem. And I said, oh yeah, I'll be happy to do it. She said, well, if I'm meeting with the mayor, or if the mayor is involved, it has to be a board member. So it's a board to board, or board to council, or mayor. It's the elected official thing. I used to call it the Eileen Cooper Reed rule, and which it is, but it even predates Cooper Reed. So the city manager and the superintendent meet on business and or the equivalent and what have you. And when there's the elected official, there has to be somebody, whether it's the president or another member of council, another member of the board, or what have you. Depends who it is.
Thanks, Ms. Bolton. Dr. Ma, I'm not sure if we're answering the actual question that you were raising.
Well, the historical context is definitely relevant. Let me just put the context into why this was relevant. I am really not concerned about who meets as far as a board member. It doesn't matter to me. But the information sharing is what I think is missing. And so if it's you or whomever on the board side, I think that's important. But what I was taught, and when I asked other board members that currently sit on the board and that have been previously on the board, when there is a meeting, the information should be shared. It should be typed up like, hey, this is what happened. It shouldn't have to wait. We shouldn't have to guess. We shouldn't have other board members shouldn't have to ask you or whomever went, hey, what happened at that meeting? So that's the issue for me, is that the information is kind of stopping. And that's more relevant. I was always taught it was elected to elected. And I've made the request multiple times for information sharing. That's not happening. So that's really the issue.
So let me answer that directly for a second. What I have tried to do is anytime I've met with the mayor and the superintendent is provide an update to everybody at our next public meeting. I've done that every time I've met with the mayor and with the superintendent. Is that sufficient for people? Would people like something different? I hear your request for something written, Dr. Moffett. My hope is that an in-person update would be sufficient and also be, I think, more in keeping with keeping things open and public. But I'll do whatever a majority of folks are asking for.
I believe that's the practice also when we go to conferences. The next public meeting, we should be reporting back whatever it is we've learned within reason, please, and relevant. So that would make sense that would be the same kind of timing, unless there's something terribly pressing about it.
I would agree as well, just making sure that we're reporting back in a timely fashion, whether it's written, whether it's at a public meeting, but I think just making sure that we're getting that information, because I do agree that that has been a concern. It's gotten a little bit better, but just making sure that we're staying consistent with that.
Yeah, I've only had two, and I've shared updates on both, but I'm happy to do whatever the board would like. Ms. Jones or Mr. Craig, do you have a perspective on what kind of updates you all would like?
No, I mean, I think maybe the one point of clarity I think it also helps in some of this discussion is that there are times where meetings are requested of us in which folks are not able to attend. And so, I mean, I think maybe that actual clarification that while it was requested at that point, based on because also part of the problem is the timing in which some of these things are requested. Or if you request a meeting the day before or a few days before, it makes it very difficult for folks to readjust their schedules to be able to do so. And so I think that's also maybe just a clarification as to when there's a meeting requested that we were not able to attend or that's been rescheduled or that type of thing at the next public meeting is maybe another add-on to that question.
Just for clarification for me, because I don't know if this is from the last meeting that occurred, based on Board Member Craig's point. As a follow-up to the issues that were occurring at Woodward, the mayor was asked to visit Woodward. Before he visited the school, out of respect, he contacted me to find if it was okay for him to go to the school. And of course I said, yes, it was okay. And he said, after that, we will follow up with the information that was provided for him while he was at the school. He met with a group of students at the school as he told me that he would. The following day or so, I went to the school and I met with a group of students as well. So we both had 2 separate meetings with a group of students from Woodward. After that, the mayor's office reached out to me and to 2 of the board members and asked about a meeting. Initially, if the mayor's office calls and asks to meet, I try to accommodate that. And there are several conversations that happen as a part of that. So at this point, one of the things that he offered to our students at Woodward was that after he had a conversation with me, that we would look to jointly come back to the school and share with the students. So in terms of the meeting conversation, the conversation that we had, as the superintendent, I shared that information with the board. I recognize that this question is not really about me as much as it is for the board, but I think at least I want to make sure that the context that I'm thinking about right now is the context that we're discussing, because this was a meeting that was requested of us. There was not necessarily a whole lot of clarity around what we were going to discuss, but the mayor and I have had meetings together before. The city manager was a part of the meeting as well as some of my staff went to the meeting also. So we decided that we would jointly go back to Woodward and just re-engage with the same students so that we could help them understand these are the city's responsibilities, these are the school district's responsibilities, these are the things that we're looking at right now in the community to give some feedback to the students. So I think that might be some of this particular clarity, but in terms of that meeting, that day, the 2 board members that were invited to attend, I think it was Board Member Lindy, or President Lindy, and also Board Member Weinberg, who is the Chair of Health and Safety, because it was around safety concerns. And at the notice that we received, neither of them were able to attend, but there wasn't a reason for us not to continue with the conversation around what needs to be next steps for the students. So if that adds any clarity, or if I need any clarity, it would be if the board could provide that to me as well, because that's really been the nature of the meetings, and that's the only meetings that we've had at this point since the last time this conversation was surfaced that I know about.
So I'm just again, for clarity, this came from August 24th, and it was from the meeting with the mayor that happened on Friday in your.
August 24th?
I'm sorry, April. And there is Woodward High School mentioned, but it also turned into public safety collaboration, school-based health centers and nursing, the Public Safety Academy, and the statement was the city asked if we could take responsibility for hiring the crossing guards. They are citing capacity and the ability to give the best service in this area. That's when I said, well, hey, can I be part of that conversation as well? And that's where the whole email thing went with, no, that's really not, that's the president's responsibility. So I was asking out of a response to the topics were broader than Woodward from your report, and asking if there will be inclusion of other board members. I would like to be able to be in that conversation. And so again, it wasn't just about Woodward, it was let's talk about the process, because I think that it could have been if the 2 board members that were requested couldn't be there, the invitation could have been open to others. And that's what I was asking for. So that's where this went left, because it seems like when I make these requests, they go to the right or left. But that was how this came about. Like, we need to talk about this as a full board when other board members are making that request.
So just to add for that, the meeting that the mayor's office requested was about safety at Woodward. Once we got there, these were other things to discuss, and that's why I brought them back to the board. So in going into that conversation, these are all things that are very relevant to the work that we have to do administratively and moving forward. That's why I shared them with the board to bring them back to the board. There were no decisions that were made as a part of it. But I will ask the next time there's a conversation that the mayor does ask me to be a part of. We have planned to meet more regularly because there are a lot of things that across the mayor and the city manager, they're working on together. Each of the meetings, as I shared, the city manager has been a part of the meeting as well. So it's not just the mayor, it's been the city manager also. But I will ask moving forward what those topics are so that we do make sure that we have some board member representation as a part of those meetings.
I appreciate that. And I think Dr. Moffat, this idea sounds like it makes a lot of sense to me. Like if one person can't be there, to continue to extend that to other board members, I think it sounds pretty reasonable. Yes.
I just, as a final sort of add to this, and again, I'm going to repeat what I said before. There's nothing that precludes any one of us from meeting with city council member, the mayor, or anybody. And I do agree that we can bring the information back, especially if it calls for us to make decisions on behalf of the board. I think it would be helpful, and I know Dr. Moffitt has been trying to get this meeting together. We haven't been able to get a date. But if we can get that on the books on a regular basis, that's going to help a lot, I think, in the continuity and the flow of this dialogue. And so I'm just encouraging us to look. And I know you've tried, and the dates just didn't seem to gel, but I think that would help a lot. And I'm not going to be able to talk in a few minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Mr. Craig, last word.
And I think also part of this is going to be about making sure that we are able to get those, I think to your point of getting those regularly scheduled, will also allow us to regularly coordinate a little bit better. Because I think part of the problem happens is that when the meeting is scheduled on like a Tuesday for a Thursday or a Tuesday for a Friday, you're now trying to rush around to find out, okay, so who can flip everything around to make their schedule work. And I think that if we're having those regular conversations, if we're having regular communication, that will allow us to better coordinate some of those things going forward as well.
Well, I think what I'm hearing is that it's not just the two, it's not just the president and the vice president, it can be open to anybody. And I think that's what I want the administration here, is that it doesn't have to stop with just two board members. It can go to extend to any board member. That was what my request was. I'm done.
And I don't think the administration was trying to limit it to us two. I think this was to Mr. Craig's point. We had about, I don't know, 36 hours or something on this. I said I couldn't make it. Ask Brandon. He said he couldn't make it, and then the meeting happened. And you didn't ask anybody. So but I think your point's well taken. I think your point's well taken. Okay, so moving on to item 3. This is from Ms. Bolton on board communication to the public and to LSDMCs.
Yes. Again, recalling previous years, the board has normally, when it's met, whether it's meeting alone, among ourselves, or whether it's with the administration or not with the administration, we have normally, over these years, had available to us public affairs, rather than be left to our own devices and then typing whatever we're trying to say to come up with a statement. So my request is that for the superintendent to make sure, if at all possible, that available to the board, we're making statements or getting our message out or what have you, having the ability to use the professionals, the wonderful professionals that we have, and that person or whichever person that would be assigned to us. Because I can recall whether, it was Lauren or whether it was Janet or whatever, whether they were in the room or whether they were in the hallway. It really helps us get our messaging out as well. And I think it's not in conflict, but of course the superintendent would have to direct the person for that. The other item I want to mention is that no decent, self-respecting principal or superintendent necessarily likes to have LSDMCs report certain things. I can remember distinctly with Mrs. Ronan, if a principal and an LSDMC would come with a school issue to the board, superintendent response would be to the principal, can't you control your own school? So I understand the bureaucracy, I understand the pathology, but I do think that increasingly we have, and maybe it's the work we've done for a few years now to kind of re-establish LSDMCs and reinvigorate this very proud tradition. I think we need to maybe in the bylaws and with the understanding of the administration as well, we probably have to work out I don't want to say a formal, but at least in a kind of approved way that LSDMCs could reach out to the board and not feel as though they're going to get their principal or anybody in trouble, or that they have something to share with us. We don't want to disrupt the hierarchy administratively, but indeed that is a community group within each school, represents both the people that work there and also the people that send their kids there or community members. So just if we can figure out a way to make that happen with nobody necessarily thinking they're going to get in trouble or that we don't have that information, because we buy into the idea about staff, and we've worked, I think, on that. But I think the LSDMC piece would help the board understand what's going on, and I think it would invigorate the LSDMCs too. So just something to think about, whether that's in the bylaws or whatever.
I think this is a good topic, Ms. Bolton, because I think we have a great process running that will create an upcoming opportunity to engage on exactly this issue. Because I think if particularly if there's a suggestion for what should be in our bylaws around LSDMCs, just a friendly reminder that folks should be sending to Chair Morosky any feedback they have on the suggested bylaw changes by the 15th of May, which is 1 week from today. That way they can discuss this, and you're on this committee. This is a great place, and every other suggestion from board members on the 19th. I think people have comments. We should air them, but I think this will also ultimately be recommended through that process, and then we'll get a recommendation from our policy committee.
Good on that one.
All right, setting records. Number 4, board and board members' interests and priorities for FY24 budget, also from Ms. Bolton.
This one will be short as well, as we are closing in and to mid-May. As finance chair, I would just like to remind board members that decision time is happening, and that means things that may not be pleasant to decide or hard to decide or easy to decide, and that's going to happen. And it would behoove every board member to come to grips with what priorities they have as a member representing the community and what they feel most strongly about, whatever that may be, to know what those priorities are as an elected representative, as well as do as much work and study as possible. We are, I think, trying very hard, as I understand it, to make that end of June deadline. I threw in the towel months ago. I still don't think it's going to happen because we don't know if this board can say no yet, which is an issue. But at any rate, please be thinking hard about what you really are ready to die on the hill about and what you know probably would be best for the district, but hard to do. So just come prepared for those meetings that will be occurring.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Mr. Craig.
Just wanted to remind everybody also that in connection also with what Board Member Bolton was saying, is that this is also the time in which the district is really going through both the requests from the schools as well as the requests from central office. And so that challenge is uniquely more difficult when we think about the real challenges that may happen on a daily basis within our district and going into the next year, those things that are really important. And so I know we are all getting emails and whatnot of things that are new ideas for us to do in the midst of us already having new ideas and other matters that are being reviewed. And so it is very important, to Board Member Bolton's point, that we also are thinking about that in the context of finite set of dollars that have to be used in an equitable way.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Any other discussion on this board matters item? Ms. Bolton, just for clarification, I think this is what you were saying, but I just wanted to check. We're in early May. We have less than 2 months until that end of June deadline. There are going to be hard decisions coming up on budget, and that people should come to board meetings ready with what their priorities are and why, so that we can have discussions together and figure out will of the board on financial priorities.
That's exactly it, and be very respectful of each other's views and values, and know what the administration's trying to do, and the administration has to be respectful of what we're trying to do. So this is just crunch time. Thank you for the summary.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Any other items on whatever number we're on here, number 4? Superintendent or Treasurer, anything you want to get in on number 4? Nope. Okay. On number 5, this is carried over from last time. I think thank you so much to our board office, Pat and Phyllis, for putting together this draft set of dates. As I understand it, some of the urgency on getting these dates together now, even though we're talking about January 24 and beyond, is that we want these will be printed in materials that will go out much sooner than that. So are there, I think I might actually ask to start with the superintendent and treasurer. When you reviewed this proposal, did it raise any concerns or any flags on your end?
It didn't for me.
Thank you, Superintendent. And Treasurer Wagner?
No, sir.
No.
The only thing that I would ask that we do, and we can talk about it tomorrow in terms of dates, but there was the ask earlier to go back to having at least a meeting in a school at least once a quarter. And if we can go ahead and select what those dates would be now and add it to the published dates, that way it gets out to the public early on and they can plan for it. Because I do think that that's been one of the challenges, trying to get it done in either May or June.
Yeah, Ms. Jones.
I would suggest to the superintendent that you just go ahead and work with the schools to see what works. If it's a regular meeting date, we have to meet anyway. So whatever seems easiest, I think, rather than trying to get dates from us, I think it would be much easier if you just pick one.
No,
we trust you with that.
Thank you.
And the schools, right.
I'll just say the one thing I always look through on these calendars, and this is just, personal perspective, is do we conflict with the Jewish holidays in the fall? And we don't, which is lovely. So thank you. They're even marked as religious holidays on here. So thank you very much. Anything else on item 5 before we keep going? Ms. Bolton.
Just because this is an election year that we're in right now, that there likelihood a new board. So as we start to plan the following year, I don't know how this has to be. Do we need more, or hopefully not, or be more, think in a stronger way about our retreats or work sessions, or changing some meetings to work sessions instead of board meetings?
I fully support that and think it's a very smart. I don't know that we can fully anticipate at this point exactly what and when we'll want, but I think to be open to that is a great idea.
That would be much better. We used to do that.
Yep. Mr. Craig.
Just wanted to highlight though also November 4th, since Board Board Member Bolton reminded me that it's an election year, is the day before Election Day. I don't know that that's a problem necessarily for our purposes or whatever, but I also recognize that that also may be a weird day of, just craziness in general. So it's not something I think we have to change right now, but I think it's just something we should probably be aware of and noting as we come closer.
Yeah.
It's also presidential election day as well, so we have no idea what
Exactly.
the world may look like.
Well, looking at the most recent polls, we can all just be a little concerned.
Okay, I'm moving this forward. So I think we're good on this for 5 for now. Thank you very much. We had a number of, we had a good discussion in our last board meeting about the difference between board matters, inquiries, and updates. We had a number of requests that were questions for the administration. We do have time for any of those now that any board member would like to ask the administration on anything.
So I'm sorry, since it's been applicable to me, I kind of just jumped in, I apologize. Can I get some differentiation on what the difference is between board matters and inquiries and updates? Because I tried to look in the bylaws, it wasn't clear. I'm going by people's recollection of how it's been used, and I appreciate that. But I get frustrated as a board member when I put things on the agenda and they get taken off. I think it is somewhat disrespectful to me as a board member because I feel like it should be there and it shouldn't be filtered, but I don't know exactly where it needs to be. So I'd like to, before I completely get irate, I'd like to get some clarification on what is the difference between board matters and inquiries and updates, and then what would be the process for a board member putting things on the agenda. I've gone through, I think we have an unvoted on process of classifying it, the time limit, whether it fits in the goals and where does it fit in a line, and is it for, we didn't vote on that. That was just something that I think we've all kind of given way to accommodate you, President Lindy, and I'm fine to do that. But I want to understand what the process is of putting things on the agenda and then what the expectation is. If we could just level set with that, I'd be appreciative.
Thanks, Dr. Moffett, and I'll invite Member Jones here in a second because I think I learned a lot of this from her too. But the distinction at the last meeting was very helpful for me. Was that an inquiry or update is a question for the administration. A board matter are questions amongst the board. Is that accurate?
Pretty much. I want to add that in inquiries and updates, you can inquire from a board member or anybody. It's a simple question, so to speak. If you're inquiring about some matter, or you can direct that to the appropriate person at that time. Updates, of course, are anything like Ms. Bolton referenced, like if we go to a conference or something and we might want to update on what the status of that was, or we're involved in something and we want to update on people on what's going on. Board Matters was created to really prioritize those discussions which could potentially require an ultimate decision. And a good example of a board matter item is Mr. Morosky is very good at using board matters this way. When there's a policy question that comes up, the policy committee usually works it through. They put it in the minutes, but they bring it to board matters just to get feedback and input and have some level of discussion with the board before they go back to the committee to finalize it. So the distinction is, in my mind, and nothing stays the same, but the distinction in my mind is board matters takes more of a higher priority because it involves discussion within the group. And inquiries and updates are very specific, directed to a specific issue, to a specific person for a response.
I think I appreciate that, Member Jones. I think this just speaks to me to the importance of this bylaw review that we're doing to hopefully get some additional clarity. Because I'll share that even in what you shared here, I heard some different things, and I may have misheard it last time too. But I think, there's lots of good intentions from lots of sides, and also some fluidity to how we've used some of these categories in the past. And I think it's reasonable to ask that we get some definitions in our bylaws and then hold each other to them.
Yeah, I do think Dr. Moffett is correct. It's not very clear in the bylaws, and I think that's the place to address it, is in the bylaws.
One from Ms. Bolden, but then I want to get to that questions we have to
well,
make sure we.
I asked for further discussion and clarification regarding the school community coordinator position, and I asked for it under board matters. Now, based on your definition, items that could potentially require a decision, I wanted clarity on that because there still was a little bit of ambiguity. For me, I'm still confused. So I'm kind of confused as to why that was taken off. When I asked for that, I asked for legislative updates. Those are things to me that the board needs to deliberate.
So Dr. Moffett, this was my decision in putting the agenda together, and I was using the distinction as I understood it from our last meeting, which is different from what we just talked about a moment ago. Okay. So and this is what I had emailed, like anything, and it was not just for you, for any board member, but anything that could be answered with anything that was a question focused on the administration, I would encourage people to bring up under inquiries and updates. Anything that was a question for discussion amongst the board, I put in board matters. So that was, I'm happy to adjust that thinking. This was my effort to carry forward what I understood from our last discussion as a board. And I think even just the, different interpretations that are clear tonight speak again to the importance of getting this defined with some process. And I want to make sure you get the content of your question answered too.
Well, I kind of don't, because I still am confused on if a request is made, how does that get taken off? Or, if a request is made to be put on the agenda by a board member.
Can I ask?
Hold on, let me finish my question.
Okay.
If a request is made, what is going to be the process of putting that request on because the board member asked? I don't want to put our administration in between, meaning our admins, in the middle of discerning that. I responded, and then I believe that this is, we have this whole deliberation piece of deliberating on email, and I don't like it. I feel like if the request is made and it's not appropriate or it's not desired, that's when communication should be pick up the phone and ask for clarification. And I don't know if that's happening. It has not happened for me. I don't know if it's happening for other people. So I would like to know what is going to be our process moving forward so that I don't continue to feel disrespected in that manner. So now, go ahead. I'm sorry, Board Member Jones, if you want to respond.
I'll just, throw it to Ms. Jones in 1 second. And gosh, I'm just so sorry if that felt disrespectful in any way whatsoever. I made my best effort to respond, and I was seeing it. All of your items are on tonight's agenda. And we have time now for any question you'd like to ask under inquiries or updates. If people would like to do a different way of defining these sections, I'm happy to do that. I also think, as I understand the current version of the bylaws, it is a charge of the president to understand or to build what goes on each agenda. The expectation is that requests from board members get considered within 2 business meetings. So I think it's very important to me that every board member have a chance to ask any question they want to ask, and we have that time tonight. So that would be taken care of in this very first meeting. But at least as I understand it, there is also room to hold that for a business meeting if there's more on the agenda than we're trying to cover in a reasonable time period. Ms. Jones, did you want to share?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think that we all come with a different sort of understanding of the intent of these meetings. And I do think that our bylaws, I'm glad that we're doing some edits because I think this is where we make those significant changes. But in everything, and I'm speaking from my own experience, and everything that I know, have learned since I've been a board member is about governance and how you operate as governance and those processes. Everything that I read, we talk about the meeting being used to take care of the board's business. And people can, you can define that, people define that differently. However, I feel very strongly, I was in Ben's seat for 4 years. That's when we brought on board matters. But that the president's role is to facilitate the agenda and move the agenda forward. Now, what that means is he also has to prioritize, because we shouldn't be here till 9:30, 10 o'clock talking about process stuff. That's my opinion. We should not be here talking about process stuff. Board business. If there is a question, and legitimately so, there are going to be questions. I'm not putting any parameters on what that question could be. That's why inquiries and updates was on there, to ask a question or what have you. But I do think it is, I do believe that it is the president's responsibility to make sure that we move the agenda forward. And sometimes that means that he or she has to question some of the agenda items, whether or not it is the highest priority for that particular agenda. And so having conversations with board members, like if there's 8 or 9 or 10, Board Matters was never intended to have 8 or 9 or 10 items under it. It was really to distinguish where the highest priority discussions were. So when things come up, I think it's appropriate to ask, is this a high priority item? Is this something that requires a decision tonight, or can we put it on another agenda, or can we put it under a different category? That's I think that's something that our president should be able to do. And if it's not written that way in the bylaws, maybe we need to look at how the bylaws are written.
Ms. Bowman, thank you.
Yeah, if I were new to the district, as many people are, and I sat through this year of board activity, I would be stunned and disappointed that the board has spent this much time on process and self-examination. This is, a member of the public would say the same thing. And it's everybody's fault. But this whole, self-examination, self this, self that, process this, whatever, let's expedite the bylaws, get them done, save some couple of hours where we can argue about it. When anybody brings something to it, it's not going to be a quick vote. Get this over with. The bylaw thing, we got our goals and guardrails, great, let's move on. We have to finish the strategic plan, we have to pass a budget, we got all this stuff. I think everybody's process questions have been correct, and frankly, I just blame Carolyn for board members, board matters and inquiries and updates, because it was her way as president to try to address some of this stuff. So, inquiries and updates and board matters, I think our agenda, as I think Ben is trying to, and I know we all are interested in changing the agenda too, because there's ways to organize this meeting so we're doing substantive stuff, not just only the 5 things that we say are most important and everything else will take care of itself, which it doesn't. But I just think let's get these bylaws done, get the strategic plan happening, and we can get back to just doing district and substantive work.
Thank you, Ms. Bolden. I want to make sure you get a chance to ask any substantive questions you do. Moffett, I see Mrs. Weinberg, but I will come back, I guess, in a second. Yep. Yeah.
So yes, thank you, Board Member Moffett, for bringing that up, because I too was very confused in terms of what actually is board matters and what actually is inquiries and updates. And I look forward to any suggested wording to come to policy, because I do agree it needs to be completely clear. It needs to be consistent. It shouldn't change by the week, the day, the month, whoever the person is. But I look forward to that. And so we're going to get some work done.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. Dr. Moffett.
So I felt like my questions were relevant. I still had a question about the school community coordinator position, and I've sent it via email. I'll get a response via email. I don't even know if it needs to be relevant now, but I'm just going to push back a little bit on the subjectivity of what you described, Board Member Jones, because leaving it up to the board president means that there's a decision based by somebody on whether or not that's important. And so the piece that I think is missing is that a conversation needs to be had. When a board member makes a request, it's because that's what they need. It's not, no matter what you think, it's not about someone trying to be petty or someone trying to add things onto the agenda. It is because that person, or let me speak for myself. It is because I would like the information, either because the community has asked or because I want clarity on it. I understand these board meetings are long. I'm sitting here too. But I do think that it's not about the number of questions. I keep hearing, if you have 5 questions, it wasn't intended for 8 things. It's about getting clarity. And I think it's about getting clarity in public. I think it's about getting clarity at a board meeting where we discuss it in public. So that was what I was trying to do. And I was just really trying to get further clarity about the school community coordinator position because I'm still confused. We did ask, we got clarity, but then it was in the board meeting minutes in April. And I sent my question to you via email, but I still just was confused on, I think so many things are lumped under school community coordinator title that aren't necessarily, they're not uniform. There's a career community coordinator, there's a school community coordinator. So when I was asked the question about the school community coordinator positions that we had in the board meeting minutes, I think it was for April the 10th, but some people are receiving communication that their positions as school community coordinators are being terminated. I was wanting to get a public discussion about that because I'm still confused. That's why I asked under board matters, because I thought it was relevant there, that can you help me make that make sense? So that's my question. To the administration, is that where it goes to the administration under inquiries and updates now?
Yeah, you had shared that was a question for the administration. Yeah, I think let's get in there. We spent a lot of time talking about a process to get things answered. We can also get those things answered. I know Ms. Jones has a comment, and I promise I'll come back.
So I did not share this via email because it actually has private employee information on it. So I brought a hard copy for the board. So if we recall the meeting that we had, that was the very long meeting. It was the first meeting that we had in April where we discussed budget and the specificity around the school community coordinators. One of the challenges in that role, and we did go back to the actual recording of the meeting to verify that the information was there. It is on the slide that was presented as a part of the budget that's also online. At that time, we were only discussing school-based positions. We discussed that there were some school community coordinators and some assistant school community coordinators that were district level that we would have to address when we got to the district. But in terms of the school-based positions, what you're referencing right now has been one of the challenges with the role. So based on what the position is tagged as in human resources, based on how the position is funded, based on how individuals are paid, all of those individuals are school community coordinators. So the one specifically that we talked about before was the role that was school community coordinator by title. The other that we talked about was the career, the one that's called the career and technical position, but it's still school community coordinator. So if we look in the roles for how they're paid, they're all paid as school community coordinators. That role was originally, and we talked about how that role came about. Initially, it was a resource coordinating role. The assistant school community coordinator, between the two of them, one of them was resource coordination. One of them was the athletic director that was in schools. So over the course of the years, that position has remained, and schools have used them in a variety of ways that have no rhyme or reason. And so one of the reasons that you have some concern and confusion right now about the positions is because the positions are confused in the field. All of those positions are school community coordinators. So what we have done, and I gave you the list of where the individuals are, what we have done for all of the positions, I shared during that meeting as well, and we've also talked about it in subsequent meetings, and we talked about it in the meeting where we originally talked about this in January, was what our goal is not to lose staff, but to try to get those staff members aligned with roles that they are qualified for based on their credentials. In some of the positions, we have found that there are individuals, and once we know about it, we are charged to do something with it. In some of the positions, we have found that those positions are, they should be in a different org structure or different bargaining unit because of what the position was. In some of them, what the individuals are actually doing, because that's what we had to do. We had to go back and find out what is the person actually doing? Some of those positions should be certificated positions where people actually have a certification to do that, and that's not how they've been done. So where we are right now, we've made contact with, we actually started contact much earlier with phone contact. Since the phone contact, and this has been through Human Resources, since the phone contact, there has been additional information that has been sent to them via email with individuals for them to contact. One of the challenges, or an additional challenge, and we discussed that also, is most of the individuals that are in the assistant school community coordinator role or school community coordinator role, the alignment for their qualifications is more readily aligned to positions that are in CFOP, to positions that might be in AFSCME, in other AFSCME parts of the organization, not necessarily certificated. So there are a few of them that could be certificated depending on what they were going to teach. Most of them are not. So there is a difference in pay in those positions that are school community coordinators and assistant school community, or really more school community coordinators and assistants, but there is a difference in pay. And unfortunately, if they don't meet qualifications for the roles and the jobs that we don't have another position to put them in.
So we're hiring, but in the minutes, under the recommendations, we are hiring for school community coordinators. So are we not changing the title for those people that are coming on? Because to clarify this, because we're still hiring for people that it says school community coordinator.
Right, so we approved as a part, the board approved and supported as a part of the budget reorganization and restructuring. One specific school community coordinator role for ELL support. So that's the only role that we're hiring for. That's a designated school community coordinator position. So if a person meets those qualifications, they could be eligible for that position. But that's the only one that we have at the school level.
Okay, and then is that for the district level positions, but what about like programs? Or I'm thinking of the Promise Center as a program, but like.
Right, so for example, the position that we're referencing as the Promise Center, that person is actually doing what would be equivalent to an operational para. So in terms of aligning that particular role, if that role is supported at the district level, as we're looking at next steps, that role would be supported as an operational para. The way that we found that out was by working with the director at the Promise Center, and as well as our director that's doing oversight for our special populations. And when you look at what the individual is doing, it is most aligned to an operational para.
Thank you. Thanks.
On this topic of school community coordinators, Ms. Bolton.
Sure, I'll do this as quickly as I can. Where I thought we left this, understanding that the confused spectrum of this, that this has been a position that has been a catch-all, which is not a good place to be. And I thought we were kind of going through a position audit, so to speak, or redefinition or evaluation of a position. That's where I thought we were. And I know that we were cutting, I knew that. My question now is, as we do this position rediscovery here, or redefinition, I'm concerned that many of the folks that are being cut here are people that are unrepresented. And in a district that has 6 unions, as a board member, whatever, I don't like to damage the unrepresented folks, because they are unrepresented and they are at a disadvantage. And we should encourage as much as we can people being in the unions or not being in the union. So so that's an issue. So I'm waiting for that position description, and I'm curious about doing something to unrepresented folks. I think it's great that we're talking about which unions they should be in or whatever. Very supportive. I'm really concerned about the career tech people, which we said on March 20th or whenever that meeting was too, just because they have play such an important role in some of our high schools in the graduation piece and the path piece. So my thing would have been to ask about where are we in the redefinition of the position. And also, then this is something I've only heard, I can't verify it. Some of these folks too have associate's degrees. And I thought we were trying to encourage that as part of the recruitment. I remember that from the recruitment. And I would hate that some of these folks that have the associate's degree can't be found in some of this role, or this position can't be absorbed in some way or another. So my question is, how are we coming on the position description? And are these people that we can really, are all of these people, all the folks that we can live without? And also the other thing that you all mentioned, properly so, that the pay and the position, the minute people become qualified or experienced in it, there's another position that they can move into. So there's turnover here. So how are we addressing that kind of, it's a unicorn really within the HR powerhouse, so to speak.
So I think most of the list of things that you just shared, all are true. So let's start from the first. We had full discussion about the fact that we were eliminating these positions. That was supported at the board level in terms of the budget for what we were doing at the school level. We shared that we would revisit when we opened the district level positions because, for example, a role like assistant school community coordinator, which is a rep position, you can't, even if you close a position, there are guidelines that go along with that in terms of seniority and those kinds of things. So we've worked in partnership with our union president in terms of that for the positions that are still at the district level that we're looking at what may need to happen in terms of reclassification. The second thing that we discussed is that as we were looking at some of the specific positions, and the conversation that came up most loudly, I should say, was at Walnut Hills. Walnut Hills had 6 of these positions that were school community coordinator positions. So far, we have been able to, and we shared that we had done that at that time, we have been able to really pinpoint what the roles are actually doing. For 3 of the roles, we believe that it would be appropriate that it's in another position if those are roles that we're still going to support in terms of programmatic needs. But 3 of the positions, based on what we currently see, are positions that should be certificated positions. So we are working in partnership with CFT at this time to review that conversation, to review those positions. We've had a couple of conversations with them already about those positions. And what the positions could be if they are not what they should be based on what the duties actually are. So that's where we are for that. So in terms of those reclassifications, the third set of positions that we talked about around reclassification that fell in this same area were the IT positions, the IT tech positions that were specific to IT. Those are positions that we discussed reclassifying those positions because of the specific work and the very, very specific work that they're doing in that space. So making certain that there was update in terms of job description for what those positions were doing. The other positions we talked about, just as you shared, we talked about making contact with each of the individuals, which we have done, to follow up with them about what we have available in the district that meets their qualifications and whether or not they're interested in those positions, because we very much want to keep individuals in the district that have been a part of the district, that have the ability to be a part of the district. If individuals have, as you said, the AA degree or some that have bachelor's degrees, they're also eligible to be long-term subs as well. And so there are some opportunities for them, but they would be positions that they would have to say, yes, this is what they want to do, because in many of the instances, the pay is different for them in the new position versus what it was in the position they were in as in the previous role. So all of those different nuances are correct, but we did decide, and I just want to make sure that I lift that we did discuss the fact that these positions would be eliminated and that there were only certain ones at the school base that we were looking to keep as a part of our next steps. In terms of the career and technical, the CTE position, our discussion there, where we landed was the role of the additional counselor that was at the school. We were charged with working in partnership with CFT, which we have done, to make sure that in that role, that additional support for CTE was lifted there, just as they're supporting the work with overall graduation. So because that role had to be a different role, because it was funded, it couldn't look just like all of the other guidance counselor roles. That was work that we did in partnership with CFT and the school counselors to make certain that it was addressed as a part of the job description.
Thank you. So it would be assumed then that the career tech role, or whether you're assuming is going to be absorbed by the additional school counselor, graduation, right?
No, actually not. That was the initial recommendation for the role that we were looking at when it was a graduation specialist. But when we went through the process and determined that that was actually CFT work instead,
right,
the person to do that role will have to be a certified guidance counselor.
Right.
Yes,
So,
those individuals are not certified guidance counselors. The career tech people are not.
exactly. I'm just saying that role, whatever job they were performing, is going to be put to the graduation person.
That is correct.
Which is a school counselor.
Yes, that is correct.
I didn't misspoke. I was unclear.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton. Ms. Jones had a comment from before.
We still in inquiries and things, or? Okay.
We are, and I think Dr. Moffitt may have a couple others she wants to raise, but you had got the floor before.
It just dawned on me. I'm not going to comment anymore on the discussion we just had, but it just dawned on me that the policy committee recommendations come before the board on May 22nd, and I have graduations that night, and I absolutely would like to be here.
Excuse me. We can make sure that the policy committee meets the Friday prior, Ms. Jones. I think it's unlikely that we are able to turn around a committee report and a set of recommendations over the weekend. So I think we will absolutely make sure we have everybody here. Phyllis just smiled, so we got that one. But we will do it as soon as we possibly can. No problem. Now, other inquiries or updates before we send folks home. Dr. Moffitt.
I hate to be a boogaboo, but not really. So I have a question. Is there an operational paraprofessional classification?
There is a there are all paras collectively, and our treasurer might be better able to speak to this. But when we were looking at, and during the COVID time specifically, there was a position that was added just so that the staff could clarify what that additional role was, and it's just the terminology that's still used. So to be more appropriate in terms of the response to your question, it would be equivalent to a para versus a school community coordinator, because all paras are under the same umbrella. You're accurate.
So for the people that are doing the school community coordinator position with bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, the recommendation is that they go to a para position?
Not necessarily. It depends on whether or not there are other positions that are available in the district that they're certified, that they're qualified for. It depends on whether or not they want to teach, because most people that have an AA or a bachelor's are eligible for a long-term sub role as well. It depends on whether or not they want to do full-time teaching, depending on what their actual degree is in. So there are some other opportunities for them. There may be CFOP positions that they are eligible for as well. So whether that's senior support specialist, so there are other roles that may be available for them. But I do believe that one of the ways that we got into the situation that we're in, and this is just talking to a lot of individuals, talking to the treasurer, talking to some of the principals, it is that many of the individuals their credentials would put them in another location. It would put them in an AFSCME location. It would put them in CFOP for most of them. And this became a way to use a position that was not necessarily a rep position, that was a different pay scale, where individuals, there were some that worked during the school year. There were others that worked year round. There was not a rhyme or reason or, I guess, consistency in terms of the position. So it's difficult for me to say just by their degree what they would be eligible for. That's why staff has reached out. There was one other person that reached out about a particular individual that had been a part of the district for a long time, and another board member that reached out. My recommendation is to have them follow up with human resources, because they're able to talk to them specifically about what's available based on their qualifications. And if that's a position that they are interested in, then that's something that we can help facilitate. If it's not, we don't have a way to change what the qualifications are for a position that they're actually eligible for.
And the last part of my question is, do we know how many of the people in these positions that are terminating are within a year of retirement?
I'm not certain. I know the one that you asked about before was one that we followed up with once you shared that information with us. So we were able to follow up with that, but we can find out. We can do the research and find out.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other inquiries or updates? Hearing none. Moving on to assignments. Are there any assignments this evening? Hearing none. Moving on to announcements and kudos. I think Ms. Jones would like to share one tonight.
Yes, I have an announcement. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. National Children's Mental Health Awareness Week is May 7th through 13th. And National Children's Mental Health Awareness Day is Thursday, May the 11th. You will see the board members have green ribbons. The green ribbon is the official color for the National Children's Mental Health Awareness Week. And it brings public awareness to the needs of children and youth with emotional, behavior, and mental health challenges and their families across the nation, because green symbolizes growth, support, health, healing, and hope. The Hamilton County Mental Health and Recovery Services Board and the Hamilton County Suicide Prevention Coalition are partnering this year to promote the Life is Better with You Here suicide prevention and media campaign message. You will see on the screen the QR codes in English and in Spanish that will connect you to local resources. I also put out on the table a number of green ribbons and am asking people to wear the ribbons this week in recognition of National Mental Health Awareness Week. And if we have any leftovers, I'm going to ask the staff to make sure, Superintendent, if it's okay with you, we can put them out at the front desk for people to take one, if that's okay. So that's my announcement, and thank you for supporting. In case you don't know, I'm a retired mental health professional of 40+ years. So I believe very much in promoting Mental Health Awareness Week.
Thank you, Member Jones. And thank you for the ribbon. For other announcements or kudos, Mrs. Weinberg.
All right, I have just a couple of kudos that I would like to kind of talk about. And I just want to first say that if anyone who is listening or will watch, if you have any announcements that you'd like to share, you can always feel free to email me. I typically get these from individuals in the community or from reading different things. So I wanted to first give a shout out to the Walnut Hills High School Theater Department production of Macbeth. And they were able to attend the 2023 Cincinnati Cappies Award Gala. And at this particular event, Walnut Hills took home 9 awards, and it was the most out of any school in the Cappies this year. Their critique team also won the Best Critique Team Award 4 times in 3 years in the running. So I think that they deserve a big round of applause. Up next, I just wanted to highlight and give a big kudos to Josh Harden with the Get Fit with CPS Athletics. This took place at Rockdale Elementary. And as you can see from the particular pictures here, I think it's really a big push on fitness and also on healthy living as well. And then my last kudos is again about Walnut Hills High School. I just wanted to give a huge shout out and a good luck to them for the junior high girls and boys track team. They will be heading to Columbus this weekend to compete in a non-state meet. And I just want to wish them all good luck. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Weinberg. Other announcements and kudos. Dr. Moffitt.
I have some really great. Today I had an opportunity to, and I told them I was going to shout them out, and I didn't know if I was going to get this in there, but thank you to Rob for creating my slides. I had an opportunity to visit the Lighthouse Music Program. We all got an invitation, but I couldn't go on the day that they had like an open house, but I was able to go over there today, and I got the chance to hear from Queen Destiny, who gave an awesome rap. They create their own rap. It's a way to help students learn to ideate, but then also it's a stress reliever. It's just a way for them to take the things that they are going through and put pen to paper and really express themselves. And so thank you to the staff for giving me a tour. I actually emailed board member Moraski and said, you got to get over here and see what these kids are doing. It's right up your alley. He might be on the next video that they create. So thank you for hosting me today. I appreciate that. I was able to join the convening for the Green Schoolyards in San Francisco. I know that board member Bolton and myself attend their meetings regularly here in Cincinnati, and I was able to join our chief of academics, Ms. Butler, and Councilwoman Mika Owens, and Parks Manager Crystal Daniels in San Francisco for 3 days to learn about the importance of green schoolyards. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about what the purpose of, or what the objectives of that. That was in connection with cities connecting children to nature. And it's been around for a very long time, but it has definitely heightened since the pandemic and getting kids outside and helping them with social emotional learning. Also academics, we were able to tour a school district in San Francisco that has converted an old school building, and they make all of their food for the entire district, 70,000 kids in this one building. They grow all their stuff. They've got, it's just awesome. It is awesome. So the purpose of that, it was to encourage green schoolyard initiatives, sustainability, systems change through policy, stakeholder engagement, and funding strategies, amongst some other objectives. But they had other cities. I think the city of Atlanta brought their commissioner, their school board members, plus some of their district personnel so that they could work on getting access to and awareness of all of the funding that is available. There's so much funding available for this type of programming. And this was great. So I do have some formalized information, but I wanted to show you all a little bit about that too. Another thing that I didn't get a chance to make a slide for, but I was able to attend the Girls to Women event, which was great and awesome. Thank you to Chief Shauna Murphy and the staff that put that together for inviting me. I think they invited board member Weinberg. She couldn't make it, so I filled in and it was fun. And then the last thing I wanted to share was I found this yesterday, which I thought was really cool. I posted it. The most winningest African-American jockey for the Derby is Deshaun Parker, and he is a CPS Western Hills alum. I thought that was so cool. That was cool. So I posted it on everything that I had, and people have been reposting it. I was like, look at CPS. So we are doing great things out here in this community. And I said, CPS is proud of you. That's the one time I spoke for the board. CPS is so proud of you. Deshaun Parker, and his Twitter handle is @JocksDeshaun. And so make sure that you send him some kudos from CPS, because he is the most winningest African-American jockey in the history. So, and he's a Western Hills grad. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt. Any other announcements or kudos? I know Ms. Bolton, did
Yes.
Mr. Craig have one too? So we'll go Ms. Bolton, then Mr. Craig.
Thank you. Very quickly, had the privilege, pleasure to attend what is called the CFT Showcase, where as part of the national leadership effort within the American Federation of Teachers and everybody else that cares about this sort of thing, teachers in Cincinnati public address a particular problem, do the particular research, develop the particular kind of solution that would work here with great specificity. And there were a dozen or so teachers, and some of them in a team, but others serving individually, presented, I think, some extraordinarily complex resolutions, but also some very, very simple resolutions to some problems, and talking about the year's calendar and what do you do about family engagement, talking in terms of restorative practices and what have you. I was very impressed with their enthusiasm, and one of them had just recently been notified that they're in the pipeline regarding being an AP. So there was that sort of celebratory experience as well. But I enjoyed it, and it was great to be back at the Gamble over there, elementary Montessori. They were good hosts, but actually wouldn't be opposed, Mr. President, that perhaps some of those teachers could present some of their solutions and concepts and what have you. It might be a good presentation. I know that the superintendent and the board would enjoy what they have to say.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bolden. Mr. Craig.
So I have three kind of quick ones here. First was had the pleasure of attending the CPS International Jazz Festival again this year with President Lindy as well as former Vice President Jones. It was great experience again. I think it's just so tremendous what our students are able to do from a musical standpoint. Again, Dr. Rudnick and the whole crew putting together, having these international artists come to work with the students and really showcase the talent that we have in the district. So that was tremendously wonderful event. I had the opportunity to, although I didn't get a chance to get to a friend of mine sent me pictures and video of the whole event at Fairview. They had their art show. And so they displayed all this artwork throughout the halls of Fairview of all these wonderful things that the students put together. It was tremendous to see, I mean, literally the entire walls down the hallway, like almost every inch of it was covered with the kids' picture. And so it's so amazing to see the talented things that our students are doing, and to really highlight some of those. And when the last one I want to do is, the board doesn't work without the staff there that support us. So one of our staff members recently had her 25th birthday. That's what I'm gonna go with. So I just want to say happy birthday to Ms. Davis.
It's a great year. Thank you, Mr. Craig. I'll go swiftly here. Two things from me. One, if people may be tracking House Bill 8 this week, there's an opportunity to testify tomorrow for people who are interested. I'm not an expert on this bill at all, but a group that I like a lot called Honesty for Ohio Education, that I encourage you to follow and sign up for their email list, believes that this is a bill that is harmful for LGBTQ+ students, decreases access to medically accurate sex education, and can be a gateway to censorship on a host of issues. So people who are interested in being engaged or offering testimony, I just would refer you to the Honesty for Education Ohio website. And if you need help finding that, please let me know. Lastly, I just want to thank everybody for taking the survey I sent a couple Fridays ago. And it was about a topic that came up a bunch this evening, which is, are our board meetings too long, the right length, or too short? And if you think they are too long, what are ideas you have for what might make them more focused and more efficient? I'm not quite ready to share the results. I'm actually happy to share them with you, but they're not done because we need Mike's, and he's been on vacation. But I just think there's some real urgency on tackling this. It is almost 9 o'clock. We had one of the shortest agendas that I can remember us having. And we spent a fraction focused on the things that we said were most important.
And we even reaffirmed we're still most important at the beginning of the meeting. And so I think there is real divergence on what we should be spending our meeting time. I'm committed to advancing what a majority of us think we should be spending our meeting time on, whether that's what I personally agree with or not, which is why I asked for input from everyone in that survey. One thing I will share is there is broad consensus that we'd like to see our meetings. That's the good news. And I'm going to try to figure out ways in our upcoming meetings to bring some proposals to the group that we can vote on. That way we are improving things, I think for us, also for our staff. I want to acknowledge the folks who are here and could be other places doing other things. So thank you. And I'm looking forward to trying to move this forward in the weeks ahead. Superintendent, did you have a thought? Nope.
Only at the end.
Oh, great. So I think that's it. Last call if I missed anything. Having no other business, yes.
Yes, all I want to say is to all mothers, we understand that mothers is biology, but it's a lot more than biology. So whether you're a mother of an angel baby, a godmother, a mother aunt, you mother a child in the classroom, Mother's Day is on Sunday, and we do want to offer you a happy Mother's Day. That's all for me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Having no other business before us, I declare our meeting adjourned.